And Jackie Durand signing in for stage 13 now for Avignon across to Draguignan. And this is Bastille Day, and the pressure on the French again now to try and win a stage.
Well, Jackie Durand is always an aggressive bike rider, Phil, when it comes to these kind of stages, and certainly today is a stage that the French would like to try and take out. The 14th of July is a very special day for them, and today they face 185 kilometres on the road to Draguignan, and the last few kilometres, Phil, are very difficult indeed.
Well, after the Battle of Mont Ventoux, 151 riders left of the 180. And this was a stage many of the riders feared here as we go across the Vaucluse and the Var, heading to Draguignan. But I'm not so sure after the battering they all received on Mont Ventoux, they'll be in aggressive mood.
Well, this man certainly is very comfortable at the moment. Eric Zabel looked like it was going to be a close competition, but now leads with 195 points ahead of Roman Weinsteins with 102. All his challenges, Phil, starting to disappear.
And good start to the day as we now approach the sprint here at Robillon. Wouters getting in the 6 points, Zabel second and Nico Martin third. Eric Zabel begins to look very good in that competition again now, because the men who challenged him, Steels, O'Grady and Vust, are no longer in the Tour, and now a breakaway developing.
Well, this is the last three survivors of a breakaway that was 13 riders strong, with some very good men in it, but it split up over the last climb, and in fact Nicolas Jalabert, the brother of Laurent Jalabert, is in this group with Pascal Hervé and Vicente Garcia Acosta, the Banesto rider. And we had to go back to the finish in Mende when Jalabert won that climb, and on the 14th of July as well. So maybe his brother's trying to get himself the same victory and ride into the wheel marks of Big Brother today.
Well, I'm sure he hopes that, because he has had a pretty good tour so far, the Côte de l'Esparuce here, and that Nicolas Jalabert has decided to launch an attack. He's got 16 kilometres to go.
Well, that was a good attack, but this man looks pretty strong here, and what a crowd, Phil, that has turned out. Garcia Acosta has now decided he's going to launch the counter-attack before the summit of this climb, and I'm quite surprised to see Pascal Hervé, the other Frenchman, put into difficulty, because he had showed good form on the earlier days of this year's Tour de France, but Nicolas Jalabert is clawing his way back to the big Spaniard.
Well, the Spanish rider has been very, very active. In fact, Banesto have ridden extremely well here. They're engaged in a battle now with the Kelme team for the team race. Kelme coming up from 19th team to be challengers in this event. And now it looks as though Nicolas Jalabert, perhaps inspired by the fact he is French, has fought his way back into the action, and so too has Pascal Hervé, and he's gone.
Well, I've got a funny feeling these two French guys, Phil, today are actually trying to work the old 1-2 on Vicente Garcia Acosta, but that hasn't worked too well, because in fact he's launched another counter-attack after that one of Hervé.
Well, it was almost as if Hervé was waiting for Jalabert. Jalabert took a bottle from the car there, and in fact Garcia Acosta saw that and he is gone. And now they're going to have to recover, because one Spanish rider has worked a real number on the two Frenchmen.
Well, Jalabert there trying to keep himself in contact, not looking too good though, because, you know, I think Garcia Acosta was getting a little fed up with these constant attacks from the two Frenchmen, and that is a serious attack. He's got the gap right now, Phil. I think those two Frenchmen are going to have to get themselves back together and try and pull himself back.
So, Vicente Garcia Acosta, he's a very big man, but they're not going to catch him now because he's holding them off here. The time gap has gone up. He's never been really clear. He's got about 20 seconds over them, but he's won the stage, and they'll be kicking themselves now, Paul, because this man has stolen their day of celebration.
Well, they attacked him one at a time as he goes across the line there, Phil, to take his first victory of this year, and only his 6th as a professional athlete. And coming in for second place, Nicolas Jalabert, well, Phil, he can only wonder about what might have been.
And here comes Nicolas Jalabert and Laurent Pascal Hervé, rather. And they are going to have to settle for second here for Nicolas. He'd go to bed tonight dreaming of what might have been. He looked good all of the way, and he's finishing 25 seconds down. Hervé further back than that. As the sprints continue here now, this is Trentin coming in, and he just gets the better there of Stéphane Herlot. But this is the man who has celebrated today, and Banesto have got themselves a good stage win here.
Well, it's turning out to be a great battle as we look here at Robbie McEwen coming across the line. For McEwen also, it's a question of what might have been, because he was also in that group of 13 riders, and Eric Zabel pretty close on his heels, 10 minutes back.
Azarbalo getting some 12th place there. That will give him more points in that competition. There's the result. So there was a real battle on Bastille Day, but from the wrong department. It was from Spain, in fact, who gets the victory over Jalabert Hervé Trentin from the Vino Calderola team. And looking further down, all of these riders finishing together. Lance Armstrong safely in 27th place. Marco Pantani keeping an eye on Lance. David Miller there as well. And so the Banesto rider, who rode his first Tour de France in 1997. He didn't finish it though till 1999. There's the overall situation. Ulrich still the same, nothing changed because none of the boys up front. The best was Mark Wouters in the break today. He lies 17th, 12 minutes 15 back. And the rest of the riders all holding on to their positions as we get near to the Alps. Hello again and welcome back to our extended program, Tour Plus. The riders are now heading into the Alps today, and ahead of them 3 extremely tough days. The weather is very antisocial. Yes, the sun is shining, but those strong winds and low temperatures are still with them. This is a massive stage today, 249 kilometres. The riders coming away from Draguignan to here at Briançon. If there are any riders feeling weak today, they simply won't get to the finishing line. They'll be in the saddle anyway for at least 8 hours. Overall, Lance Armstrong still the leader by just under 5 minutes from Jan Ullrich. Yoshiba Bolocki is third, and Mark Wouters, after his good day yesterday, is now back in at fourth. Of the other big names, Richard Virenque seems to be trying for a high finish in Paris. He's 7th. Marco Pantani continues his progress. He's 12th. Alex Zülle 14th, and our David Miller lies in 47th place. Well, Lance Armstrong, the winner last year, has plenty of experience, and he knows above all that this race is far from over yet.
The race is far from over, a very long ways.
So we're looking now at the leaders on the Col de Vars here now, after they all came together on the descent of the Col d'Alos. 7 riders got clear on the Vars, and here they are: Savadelli, Hepner, Den Bakker, Pasquale Lorente, Odriozola, Baranowski and Didier Roos in that blue jersey. This is Martin Den Bakker, the former champion of Holland, on the back, and he's having a great day on a high mountain, Paul.
He certainly is. Rabobank trying to keep themselves in contention in the the best team in the Tour de France competition, which at the moment is being led by Banesto. And Banesto have had a man in every breakaway so far today, and certainly they are looking at trying to extend their advantage in that competition over the Kelme squad from Spain, who really are their most serious challengers.
Yes, that's our favourite team, the Kelme boys, because they've got so many riders and they use different ones all the time to have a go up front. But right now we're going back here to the main field. This is Lottersby van der Wouwer, I think, having a little dig as they're trying to stretch out at the back. There's a good reaction here, and there's been a lot of softening up taking place as we're now going to bridge the gap shortly from the Col de Vars across to the Col d'Izoard. And that'll be the one where they will start to really strike for the finish, because that is one of the steepest mountains of the Tour.
It really is unbelievable. Climbs from 1,000 meters at the bottom in the town where the riders will take on their final feed to 2,000, almost 400 meters at the summit. We're now approaching the summit of the Col de Vars. This is the leading group of 7 riders. But Phil, they really are going to have a real dig deep into their resources on the descent to stay off the front of the group behind.
Well, they had a lead over the top different riders, only slightly different riders on the Col d'Alos, and they were caught on the descent with Pasquale Lorente getting the 3rd place finish, I think, there. But who's up front at the moment is anybody's guess. But I think, in fact, Odriozola was right up in the thick of it there.
They're now going to be treated to a very rapid descent off the summit of the Col de Vars here into the valley below, and still there's no major attack coming in this group. I do feel today, though, Phil, that there must be some kind of an attack which should come from Jan Ullrich. You can see him there in the pink and white jersey of Team Telecom. He's been omnipresent at the front of these groups all day long, and he feels that he's got a great chance of maybe putting Armstrong into difficulty on the final climb of the day.
There are still some points from this group here for the King of the Mountains on the first category climb, which is what the Col de Vars is. And so the polka dot jersey there of Ochoa is going to keep a very close eye on the man in that yellowish jersey just behind him, because that is Richard Virenque. And Richard really has struggled to get the better over Ochoa in a sprint for the top of the mountains.
Well, for the moment, Ochoa is the man with the biggest advantage. He has 60 points lead in this King of the Mountains competition over Virenque, and he accelerates now as we get nearer to the summit.
And he's gone for it in gritty teeth. You see Virenque is very slow getting onto his wheel, and I'm not sure he's going to do a thing about this. Ochoa comes up towards the line. He looks again for a kick from Virenque. because I think he's gone a little bit too soon there, Paul.
He certainly has. There's a long way to go from here. He was hoping, I think, to catch out Richard Virenque, but let's not forget Virenque is a master at this competition. He knows exactly when to make the effort to accelerate to get the points at the top of these climbs.
I doubt very much he knows the Col de Vars, though. We've climbed it 31 times, but not in Virenque's career. Now Virenque has marked his man as he sits on Ochoa, and back come the Telecom boys, clearly with a plan today. Armstrong will have noted that, I think, because they are looking to me as though they are planning a big assault on the Izoard. Now it's the Polti boys. Looks like Pascal Hervé trying to pick up Richard Virenque. Ochoa's got himself in a much better position here for the points, and he might be able to come out of the slipstream of Richard Virenque as Pascal Hervé now tries to lead out Richard Virenque. These are for the minor points in the competition, which really seems to be fought out this year, not at the front of the climbing racing, but halfway down the pack, as Virenque and Ochoa are doing personal battles here for minor points. Now, can they come through? And I don't think he can. Not now. Virenque has got this one.
Well, Virenque has accelerated over the top there, and in fact they've done a pretty nice move, because in fact Hervé put himself between Virenque and Ochoa. But the important thing is the man second in the competition is a long way up the road. Botero has got more points than his teammate so far.
So the peloton containing Lance Armstrong and all the principal men near him in this year's Tour de France are over the top of the Col de Vars. A breakaway of 7, about 2.5 minutes ahead, but there's still a long way to go. The valley will now lead us to the next climb, which is the Col d'Izoard. Attack after attack.
There'll be a huge explosion of this group we're looking at right now, because attacks will come from Jan Ullrich and probably from Marco Pantani, who early on in today's stage was put into difficulty on the climb of the Col d'Alos. I think maybe caught out by the acceleration and the speed that the riders covered the last 4 or 5 kilometers. But the man who's doing a great ride at the moment, we haven't seen too much of him at all, is a man who's caught in between the leading group of 7 and the yellow jersey group is in fact Botero. Santiago Botero is 1 minute and 8 seconds behind, and in fact he caught and passed the man we're looking at right now in the red jersey with the white cross on it. That's the Danish champion Bo Hamburger. So Hamburger back in the fold, and soon he'll be riding alongside Lance Armstrong.
He went over the top of the Col de Vars in 9th place, Hamburger, 2:10 behind the leaders. So he's swept up now by the Armstrong group. Botero is persevering. He's gone over in 8th place, 1 minute and 20 down on the leaders, and I think he'll persist, and I would expect to see him join those leaders before we get to the Col de Vars. Sorry, the Col d'Izoard.
The Col d'Izoard, the final climb of the day, and certainly there's going to be a major battle on the slopes of that mountain. It's almost a mountaintop finish, really, because once you reach the summit of the climb of the Col de l'Izoard, there is only 21 kilometers to go to the finish line here in Briançon, and it is all downhill. And because of the speeds those riders will reach on that descent, Phil, I would expect them to cover the last 21 kilometers in around about 25 minutes, because they will average 50-55 kilometers an hour all the way downhill.
Well, the dizzy heights of the Alps, we look out to the snow line straight ahead, and that must be pretty close to where the Col d'Izoard is right now. Remember that when we leave tomorrow, we head over another series of mountains, including the giant of the Alps, the Col de Galibier.
Well, Armstrong today counting on another very strong teammate in this leading group of riders as well, because quick glimpse there of Yaroslav Ekimov. You can see the World Championships bands on his jersey. This man is an incredible athlete. He was initially came to the sport as one of the top Russian world champions. He was a world champion in the individual pursuit and the team pursuit, as well as holding a whole host of world records for very fast speeds that he attained on the track.
And that's why he's alongside Lance Armstrong, the best keeping Lance right up at the sharp end again today. So things are going good on this first and the longest day in the Alps. There's the latest. Botero continues to creep in on the 7 up front, but this other one goes out a bit, and that's not surprising because they're not racing. 3:37 now, Armstrong's group behind the leaders, but the fact that there's so many in that big bunch is an indication that the big bunch is not in a very angry mood just now.
You can see moving to the back of this group, this is the leading group of 7, the green shorts of the Kelme rider in the group there. This in fact is Pasquale Lorente. He will have got information from behind that his teammate Botero is moving forward, so he won't contribute to the pacemaking at the front, because in fact you can see him almost looking up the mountain there to see the position of his teammate Botero, who's coming right across at the moment, and they've got 56 kilometers to go to the finish line, 20 kilometers of which is uphill and 20 kilometers is downhill.
And this man knows he's coming. He's obviously been told by his team car that Captain Santiago Botero is heading up towards him. So he will, when he sees him coming, he might well drop off here and give him a hand up.
He's doing a great move. In fact, the last time check is just 27 seconds behind this leading group. And certainly, I think before the bottom of the climb, Phil, we will see him making this lead group swell to 8 in strength. And the yellow jersey group, all of the time losing time. The last time check was 3 minutes and 40 seconds back. But that's not really what's important, because none of the riders at the front of the bike race at the moment are a threat to Lance Armstrong's lead in the overall standings.
Yes, absolutely. This is now Benoit Joachim on the front, champion of Luxembourg, another man from the US Postal team. And they look as though they're going quick, but they're going downhill just now. Well, they are going quick, but there's nobody attacking.
I'll tell you one thing, just looking along the list of US Postal riders in this group, I can't see anybody who is missing at all from the team, so they've obviously got everybody up here. This is Joachim on the front, followed by Kiergaard. Georgi Hincapie is still in there. He's in 3rd position, and Hincapie normally doesn't like the mountains too much at all. Ekimov is there, Tyler Hamilton, Kevin Livingston. The only man who may well be missing from the group is the man who is riding the Tour de France for the 9th time, Frankie Andreu.
And Frankie Andreu, along with Fred Rodriguez, both here in the Tour de France. It's just been announced by the United States Cycling Federation that they now form part of the long list for the Olympic Games in Sydney, so they'll be pretty happy with that.
Well, the United States is going to be in a very difficult position when they have to choose their Olympic
Yes,
team, because they can only choose 5 riders to take part in the Olympic Games road race.
Lance has got a chance.
Lance may well get a chance if he wants to ride.
I'm sure Lance will be leading the charge in the time trial and possibly the road race in Sydney. That's in late September. And 23 seconds now, so very shortly we're going to see Botero bridge the gap. It'll give a little bit of an impetus for this lead group. It also gives the Kelme boys a numerical advantage, and I would expect to see Botero, as soon as the Izoard starts, that's when he gets here, of course, to launch the attack.
Well, certainly, if he gets to this group, he will then see his teammate Pasquale Laurenti go to the front and really start to dig deep and try and build up a massive advantage before they get to the slopes of the Col de l'Izoard, because we've seen so far that this man Botero is a magnificent climber and a man who certainly wants to blow this race to pieces today.
Yeah, absolutely. Little demonstration of downhilling here for the Luxembourg champion, Benny Joachim. Just touching his brakes enough to control on the way down. There's Lance Armstrong. These are dangerous moments when you're the leader. You've got to really keep your wits about you. Watch, you've got yourself plenty of room on the way down so you can see the corners for yourself. You don't put your fate too much in the rider in front at this stage.
He doesn't have to worry about putting his fate in the riders in front at the moment, because they're all his teammates, and he's got complete and utter confidence in all of them. They're all really very much hand-picked riders by Lance Armstrong, who's picked the team that he wanted, the team to take him through into the Tour de France and have a team that will be in condition for the final week of the Tour.
And that looks like Pasquale Laurenti putting his hand up there. He wants his team car to come up, and he probably wants more information on the whereabouts of Santiago Botero.
Well, the information on Botero is, in fact, he's just 23 seconds behind this group at the moment. And the fact is, it doesn't look as if the hammer is really down on this descent. With Pasquale Laurenti sitting on the back, very shortly he'll be able to look up the mountain just a little bit and see the position of his teammate Botero, who certainly should make the junction before we reach the bottom of this descent.
There's the long line of the main field, and because it's so big, really, it is an indication they've ridden this first day of 3 in the Alps with a lot of common sense, because otherwise they could have ripped themselves apart here, and who knows what would have happened. A lot of riders are afraid of such a long distance today, and it looks to me as though Joachim there took it a bit wide on that bend, but he's okay.
Well, he certainly feels as if he's paid his taxes out there on the road, because he used all of the road that he could. He went across the apex, but because of the speed, he certainly drifted out quite a bit to the white line, and that's something he doesn't want to push too much to the limit, because as you get to the edge of these roads in the mountains, there are always an awful lot of large stones which you could find yourself just blowing out a front tyre, and that tends to set the alarm bells ringing.
Well, one thing that's on their side, I suppose, because these guys are feeling quite warm out there, but the air temperature is cool. And very often in the Alps, it is extremely hot. And then the big danger is, because you're braking so much, your actual wheels become quite hot and tyres start to explode. And there has been occasions when we've seen plenty of riders have nasty accidents because of just that situation. Well, Botero is almost on. I hope we see him bridge here, because we've obviously got a problem with this camera, but he's actually almost on the back of that leading group. We're going to have 8 riders very shortly down in the valley. And this is an amazing, and there he is, he's already on. We didn't see him join, that's a pity, but he's there. He's now on the back wheel of Martin Dembacker, so Kelme have 2 riders now. He's already had a word with Pascal Lorente, and the next plan surely is for Botero to attack as soon as the climb of the Col d'Izoard there begins.
Well, they'll work together now along the valley road and try and keep as much of that 3 minutes advantage as possible. But certainly this man is a great climber. The fact that he's made the junction is very good for the Kelme squad. They're now looking in another strong position here, Phil, for the competition for the best team in the bike race, having 2 men in this leading group, which is now 8 riders strong.
Well, if you look at the leaders here, and it looks as though Botero is not happy with everybody in this breakaway. He wants to go to the back and ask for his team car. Here it comes. And catch up on the latest news. Well, the news is, I think, that in the main field, Lance Armstrong's team are winning 7-2 as against the Telecoms, because there are 7 riders alongside Lance, whereas Jan Ullrich has only got 2 of his Telecom team left in that big group.
He does have 1 man in this leading group of 8 riders on the road, and that's Jens Heppner. The man that Jan Ullrich has with him is one of the best climbers in the Tour as well. That's Giuseppe Guerini, and the other man who's alongside him as well, the always present Udo Bolz, the former champion of Germany.
That's right, and in fact, Paul, I've heard that he wants to ride in the Hawaiian Ironman World Championships this year. Well, Udo Bolz was training with his team in South Africa in February this year, and they had a new triathlon there, which is around the Gordons Bay area outside of Cape Town and down towards Betty's Bay. It's a super area, by the way, and the Telecom boys stayed there, and they actually rode around the course when the Ironman was taking place. And now I hear that Udo Bolz would like to take part in the Ironman World title, because he's such a personality and he's ridden so well in the Tour de France over the years, had a high place finish of 9th. I'm sure they'd welcome his entry.
Well, I think he'd be pretty happy if he could do the cycling section first and then hope to survive.
Well, I do very well, with only one problem: I can't swim.
Well, we don't have to worry about that, Phil, because from your fans, I've always heard that you can walk on water anyway.
Thank you very much. Next year we'll have a new commentator with me.
But seriously, this leading group of 8, you can see the majority of the work here is being done by Pasquale Lorente, and he has got just one thing in mind, that's to get to the bottom of this climb as quickly as possible, because he realizes then the man taking up 8th place in this lineup here, Santiago Botero, is going to launch a pretty vicious attack, because this man has been really one of the major revelations of the Tour de France this year, and he's looking to pull himself even higher up the rankings and maybe even take over the lead in the King of the Mountains competition from his own teammate Javier Ochoa.
Well, at the moment, if this sort of gap persists, we're heading up to 5 minutes now over the Armstrong group. Botero will be in at 7th overall in the Tour de France, and for me that would be a justifiable position, because he's ridden like a top 10 rider for the last few days.
He's been very aggressive, he's always been on the attack, but so has his team. This has been one of the best Kelme squads we've seen at the Tour de France over recent years, and they certainly are deserving this year and getting an awful lot of publicity. This man is a man that could be a danger, though. He won't, I don't think, be able to follow the accelerations of Botero on the climb, but he will ride this mountain at his own pace. Paolo Savardelli is a great descender, and if he can get over the summit, I've heard it rumoured that he should be able to bridge a gap of around about 2 to 3 minutes on a normal rider on the descent of something as difficult and technical as the descent off the Col de l'Izoard.
We're not too far away now from the roads starting to kick up as the Col d'Izoard begins. It has a gentle approach to it down this granite valley here, but slowly but surely you can get some idea there. It is going ever so steadily uphill at the moment. Very soon it'll go uphill very, very steeply. There's the cloud which is coming out over the mountain just now. It's a sort of tail end of it is over the finishing line here, but we can see across to the Col d'Izoard from where we are sitting, and it is very black.
And I think that's also a bad maneuver as well, a bad move for a lot of riders. They'll be worried about this because we're going to spend the next 3 days in the Alps. Although one of those days is a rest day, if the bad weather comes into these mountains at the moment, Phil, it is going to be very cold indeed. We've had over the last week or so a lot of these major passes closed by snow, and if it does snow overnight, there'll be a lot of work out on the course trying to just keep the passes open.
Yeah, and let's hope that doesn't happen, because it would take the edge of a fabulous Tour de France at the moment. And certainly the United States will be pretty happy with the way it's going because Armstrong has ridden so well. There's Vinokurov there. Armstrong is also up here. These are the select boys, but there's a lot of them just now who have survived a rough day over 2 mountain passes and got back into the heart of the big field. There is Ulrich, always following the man who is ahead of him in the overall classification. And in years gone by, of course, Ulrich has had Pantani ride behind him, marking him as second overall in the classification. He's doing the job well right now.
He's a big, strong bike rider. And just recently, Miguel Indurain was asked to compare the 3 former winners of the Tour de France in this bike race to himself. He said, the only man I can compare to myself is Jan Ullrich. He's a big, strong bike rider. He's built the same way as I am, and I feel that he is the man capable of winning the Tour de France again in the future. He said, I can't match Lance Armstrong because Armstrong is so explosive, and I would never even think that I could have been a climber like Marco Pantani.
Absolutely amazing. There is the portrait of Armstrong. Cool and concentrated. Hardly breathing hard at all, is he? Just riding there, and yet this, I think, will be one of the most difficult days of the Tour. It's certainly the second longest of the Tour. And if you take in the terrain, it's got to be the hardest.
Quick glimpse on the far side of Jan Ullrich there. The Bonesta rider was Jose Maria Jimenez. And in fact, this advantage, Phil, is tilting all the time towards the leaders of the race at the moment, the 8-man group in front, and it's getting very close to the 5-minute mark.
There's the face of Jan licking his lips, perhaps, maybe for the climb that's ahead.
He knows he has to do something very special if he's going to put Lance Armstrong into difficulty. I think the psychological advantage Armstrong has is every time we've really gone through the mountains so far, he's really slapped Jan Ullrich in the face. He dropped him on the slopes of Haute-Cam, he dropped him on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux, but I feel these Alpine passes really do slope towards the advantage of this man Jan Ullrich from Germany, because he's a very strong rider, and the inclines here on the Alpine roads are not quite as severe as they are in the Pyrenees.
Still on the bottom of the valley road here, the peloton still not too worried about the way things are going. They're going to rely heavily on these riders cracking big time on the 21 kilometers, that's over 12 miles ascent of the Col d'Izoard. And after that, over the top, they fall down into Briançon.
Well, the leading group of 8 now, the work really all being done on the front by Pasquale Llorente, waiting for the steeper slopes of the Col d'Izoard. But you see, Phil, Bonesta have done a great job again trying to get themselves the lead, or increase their lead in this team classification, because they've got 2 riders in this leading group. One, the Polish rider, Dariusz Baranowski, and the other man there, John Odriozola. But they're fairly content now just to sit at the back of the group, because a lot of tactics now is starting to creep into this leading group of 8 as we slowly and surely approach the slopes of the climb.
I don't think any of the riders in this group have ever ridden up the Col d'Izoard, certainly not in the Tour de France, because the last time we rode this mountain was 1993. Little Claudio Chiappucci was a great entertainer for us by the way he attacked without reason or without tactical forethought. He was the first over the top in 1993. Before that, it was Pascal Richard who won the stage when we got down into Briançon. He rides for the British Linda McCartney team, but not having a great season just now. And this will be his last year as Olympic champion, I would think, because the Olympics will probably find themselves a new title holder in Sydney at the end of September.
Pascal Richard has had an awful lot of ill luck, really, since he took that title in Atlanta in 1996, dogged by illness and injury. And he was hoping this year to put in a fine performance with the rest of the Linda McCartney squad at the Giro d'Italia. And in fact, he only managed to complete the prologue time trial before then having to retire overnight with illness.
Absolutely fabulous view of the Tour de France now, and this rather shrinking peloton of riders wondering what they're going to do about those 8 men. Nobody will do anything in the valley road because there is such a long climb lying almost on the noses now. At the last time check, be it more or less 5 minutes up to the leading group. The only one that will give them any feeling of slight concern is that of Santiago Botero, who just now has climbed up into 7th place overall, and if he gets another half minute, he'll be a top 6 contender.
Well, they're going to have a hard job pulling back Botero, because he has proved that he is a great mountain climber. But still, the front of that group there, Phil, you can see a line of 8 riders, and they are all US Postal Service on the front. They're doing the work for Lance Armstrong, trying to set him up for the defence of what is going to be several attacks on the slopes of this climb. And I wonder if Marco Pantani, after being in difficulty at the 120 kilometre mark on the Col d'Alors, has recovered and ridden himself into some kind of form to put him into the kind of condition that saw him attacking on so many number of times on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux.
But we're over the magic 5 minutes now. 5 minutes 2 seconds up to those 8. The 8 leaders are 36 kilometres from the finish. The Col d'Izoard, once we're at the top of it, is 21 kilometres from the line, and we have 12 kilometres of climbing. 12 kilometres of climbing, yes, that's right. 33 kilometres in all. So, maths say about 2.5 kilometres before the leaders start the slopes of the Izoard.
Quick glimpse into that group there. I thought I saw the shape of Alex Zülle. Zülle, who's basically now given up the thought of getting himself into the top 3 in Paris. He rode excellently last year to finish second behind Lance Armstrong, but he doesn't really seem to have found the climbing legs this year that took him up to second place overall.
He's back with the leaders now as they keep their little gears and their tempo riding, but the road beginning to kick just that little bit. As we very shortly will start a massive crowd here. We're making the left-hand turn now. The Col d'Izoard is just around the corner, and these are the leaders first onto it. This famous mountain of the Tour de France. Louis Mbobé used it as a springboard to victory in his time. He won the Tour 3 years straight in the 50s, and there's the signboard. For some of the riders, there will be a tingling down the spine.
Absolutely. Many of those riders will get more of a tingling when they look across there and see the summit indicated 14 kilometres. That's going to take an awful long time to climb up there, because on slopes like this, Phil, you very rarely can actually exceed 20 kilometres an hour of riding. And many riders realise now that they're just going to have to ride up at their own rhythm. But I have to say that the man in the red jersey at the back there for Seiko, Paolo Savardelli, he looks pretty good today, and he's obviously thinking about just trying to stay in contact with this group, because he will feel comfortable on the descent down towards the finish, because the descent off this climb of the Col de l'Izoard is a very technical descent.
Well, it's the 3rd Tour de France for Savardelli, finished 33rd in his first attempt, went out on the 10th day last year, so he's a little bit better positioned now, because at least he's made the 14th day and he's in the lead on the climb. Here's the main field, still being under the escort of the US Postal Service team. They know that the time at the front of the bunch here now is limited to just a few more minutes, I would say. And then Lance Armstrong will hope that at least Tyler Hamilton will be able to stay with him on the climb, and also Kevin Livingstone. Those are the 2 riders nearest the yellow jersey. The others will make the pace until they can make it no longer, and then concentrate simply on finishing the stage.
There's a problem there. The rider from Vinny Calderillo, his chain actually dropped off, and that was a pretty dangerous move there. And what happens if that does happen on the slopes of a climb like this is you can find yourself pretty rapidly on the ground, because you lose an awful lot of momentum. I think he was able, though, to flick it back up quickly onto the large chain ring and just keep himself going forward. But that could have been quite a nasty incident for him.
Well, you never know. You've got to keep your wits about you all of the time. Good to see Paul there, though, at Josiba Belocchi and Christophe Moreau, the 2 Festina boys, who are right up in the overall classification, giving Festina a marvellous Tour de France, also near the front of this bunch. There's nobody in between the 8 leaders. I'll remind you again of those front runners. Pascal Alente and Santiago Botero are the 2 from Kelme. We've got Didier Roos from Bonjour, Jens Heppner from Telecom, Martin Dembacker from Rabobank, Jon Odriozola and Darius Baranowski from Benesto, and Paolo Savardelli, he's from the Seiko team. And now the bunch here, now the tempo though being picked up all the time. This is the new youngster, Stefan Jergaard, who has come onto the team at the last minute from Norway, and he has been a sensation. He came with a good reputation, but he's really matured in this race.
Well, you have to mature quickly when you're riding on the team of the yellow jersey, because an awful lot of work is required of you. And he's risen to the occasion, and in this last week of the Tour de France, he will learn all about what the Tour de France is about. Because I've always felt, Phil, that the difference between the Tour de France and any other bike race you take part is it's in the last week. And any rider who is able to finish the 3-week tour, his physiology completely changes, and it gives you that extra added power that you cannot get from just training.
Well, just look at this man now, Paul. He's really pushing on. He's 26.5 years of age. He is driving this race and hurting everybody as long as possible. And it is a fine demonstration, this, by US Postal. This surely is going to really frighten away the other riders. Numerically, they are advantaged here over everybody. And that's it. So, Stefan, your job is done. Now, take it easy, and we'll see you later.
Well, you can see he was digging deep there. This man comes to the team with a very big reputation of being a top time trialist, and that was his own personal time trial he did on the front of the group. Now, the next man setting the pace is the champion of Luxembourg, Benoit Joachim. He too will keep the pace high just to try and nullify any attacks on the earlier slopes of the climb.
Meanwhile, back at the front, that's the face of Javier Pascual Lorente, and that's the rider he is eventually going to try and launch for the summit. And with the win on top of the Izoard, I think he'll be the new leader in the King of the Mountains, if that's the way it goes. And maybe he'll get the stage win as well. Botero there has got 5 minutes and 8 seconds over the Armstrong group at the moment, which lifts him up into 7th place overall in the Tour de France today.
And what a great performance that would be by him, because his teammate Roberto Heras is already in the top 10. He's in 8th place overall, and I'm sure we'll see the attacks coming from him as we get higher up these slopes. This is where the riders are heading to at the moment. This is the town of Arvieux, and Arvieux, Phil, is around about 32 kilometers to go to the finish line, and around about 9 kilometers to go to the summit of the Col de l'Izoard. The Col de l'Izoard really is another of those famous mountains of the Tour de France, which has got so much history attached to it, just like the great climb of the Mont Ventoux, which we did a few days ago.
Well, in what has been an intriguing team race as well, as we look here at Martin Dembacker's bike, the Kelme team, who have now got 2 men in this breakaway, so too has the leading team, Benesto. Kelme missed out on the breakaway yesterday and consequently slipped a little bit to 12 minutes and 58 seconds behind Benesto. They're equal at the moment, 2 riders each in the breakaway, so that Kelme are gaining nothing at all in the team race. Rabobank are losing, though, probably 2nd place to Kelme, because they only have 1 rider in this breakaway.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the man on the front there, Pascual Lorente, is doing an incredible job for his team here. He has not thought about himself for the last 10 kilometers, Phil. He sat on the front of this group, powered them along as much as he can as they enter into the town now of Arvieux, and they know there's 9 kilometers to go to the summit of this climb. He will just keep riding as hard as he can, waiting for the slope to get a little bit steeper, and that's when I will expect the attack to come from his teammate Botero.
Well, the fine riding by the postman back there has got down the group lead now to 4 minutes and 40 seconds. There are only 5 of them left back there, though. George Hincapie is now gone, and Stefan Jergaard has gone, and so too has Frankie Andreu. But that's part of the plan. They've done their bit, and now they've sat up. Now, this is the part of the Izoard I've always seen on so many pictures, that long expanse of open countryside before this race kicks up through the trees again.
Well, there's confirmation of that time gap from the blackboard there, 4 minutes and 40 seconds to the group behind. The group behind is still being led by US Postal, and they're doing an incredible job for Lance Armstrong today, despite the amount of criticism they've had in the press. The press in France here have been looking for any kind of chink they can find in the armour of Lance Armstrong, and I think by attacking his team, that was the only way they could attack him, because personally I feel that the team has risen to the occasion, and in the last week of the Tour de France, they are going to be called upon an awful lot to help defend his position as leader.
And we're also hearing now, Paul, that Abraham Olano, who was in the group with Lance Armstrong, has now dropped off the back. He's having a terrible tour.
Well, the climbers are all starting to move to the front of this group there. We've just got a good long shot of Il Pirata, the pirate, Marco Pantani. The next man we're looking at here is the man who's been the best climber of the Tour de France on 5 occasions in the last 6 years, Richard Virenque. And this man now is the man who feels today he's got the chance of putting Lance Armstrong into difficulty. Jan Ullrich, his performances at the Tour de France, Phil, are quite remarkable. He has always been in with a chance of coming up with another win. And unfortunately, I think last year he was very sadly missed because of the fact that he was injured in the Tour of Germany.
Fernando Escartin, also something of a disappointment from the Kelme team. He's found a lot of adversaries in his own team this year, because he was supposed to be the star climber, but he's had to take 3rd or 4th seat to other Kelme riders.
The Kelme really is a team of climbers. Every one of those men has been at the front or on the attack on a mountain stage so far in the Tour de France. But Armstrong still looking very calm and collected. He knows the attacks will come and he will wait to respond to them. But the incredible way this rider acts in the mountains, Phil, is he waits to see who's going to attack him. He lets the climbers go off the front, waits for them to weaken, and then just leaps across the gap on his own to catch them up.
Armstrong taking his cap off there as the conditions get a little bit warmer. And Marco Pantani, I think, has a little feeling about the Col Izoard today. He didn't like the Col d'Alos, where he was off the back, but he got back on pretty easily with his teammates. Now I think he's in a much more positive mind. The steep part of the climb is still to come.
Well, certain climbs suit certain kind of riders, and obviously Marco Pantani will feel that the Col d'Izoard suits him because he was so incredible on it on the Giro d'Italia stage just around about a month and a half ago, when he blew the race to pieces, and he was trying to drag his own teammate at the time, Stefano Garzelli, away from the leader of the day, and that was in fact Francesco Casagrande. But he did a lot of good psychologically, because the day after that Francesco Casagrande just blew to pieces in the individual time trial.
Yaroslav Yekimov starting to do his turn at the front. It's up to the rest of the race to attack Armstrong, otherwise it's running his way today, that's for sure. And here comes possible attack here as Guarini starts to move up towards the front.
Pantani moving forward, he's very comfortable on the wheel there of Jan Ullrich. These guys are all looking at Armstrong at the moment, Phil. The gap is starting to come down as well. It's 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and that's all because of the work of this guard on the front. The guard of Lance Armstrong and US Postal Service. He's used his team, Phil, very intelligently throughout this stage. He's used them to the maximum, and they're dropping off one at a time.
Well, this is Avieux as the peloton comes through here now, and they are continuing to move as Conti knows what it's like to win in the Alps. The only race he's ever won was an Alpe d'Huez in the Tour de France. A pro for more than 10 years now, Conti.
And he worked very hard on the slopes of this mountain just a little earlier in the season too, because he was on the team of Francesco Casagrande at the Giro d'Italia, and he was always alongside his teammate. But further up the road the attack has come, and this is Botero now trying to ride off the front of that leading group of 8. The attack has certainly come, and he's opened the gap pretty dramatically.
Now there's the two leaders, and it looks as though Savardelli, well, he's not getting any closer, is he? At least he's not losing too much ground either.
The important thing for Savardelli is to ride a fairly good tempo, his own tempo, not to try and make contact with that group and not to put himself into too much difficulty. For him, Phil, if he goes over the summit of this climb with a deficit of 2 minutes, I still think he's a good enough descender to actually catch them up on the descent.
Well, that would be tremendous to see. We did get a chance to watch that in this year's Giro d'Italia when he came downhill so fast. He was outrunning our camera, I'll tell you. He really does, I think, shut his eyes and just drop off the mountain. But this is Conti, and Conti seems to be thinking of something good today, maybe a result. He's won 2 races in his career of Roberto Conti, and the only other one was a stage of the Tour de France in Alpe d'Huez back in 1994.
Well, if you don't win very many races in your career, but one of them is the Alpe d'Huez, that's a pretty impressive win, because that is one that nobody will ever forget. And for Roberto Conti, the man who spends the majority of his career, Phil, working for others, to have that at the end of a career is a very proud thing for him.
Almost a minute over Lance Armstrong's group. They're not chasing him down, they're working out their own tactics here. Armstrong need not attack anybody on this climb. They've got to attack him. That's why he's using his team to set the pace. But sooner or later, if they want to get that yellow jersey on the shoulders, they've got to make a move. And there's only 2 of them left for US Postal now.
Well, he's down to his last 2 lieutenants, the 2 men who he has the most confidence in when it comes to the big mountain passes. The man on the front is Tyler Hamilton. This year the books were turned around, in fact, and Armstrong worked as a domestique for Tyler Hamilton in the Dauphiné Libéré after he was put into serious difficulty on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux. But that, I think, was payback time for all of the work for Tyler's done for him in the Tour de France, and today Lance is again asking for that favour.
Well, Nico Martin has just been dropped from the back. Here comes the Pirate moving. Now, what are they going to do about this? This is an attack by Marco Pantani. It had to come sooner or later. This is after 8 kilometres of the climb of the Izoard. It's come at a time Abraham Olano just got back on at the rear of this and has gone off again.
Well, that won't be good for that man, Abraham Olano, because this acceleration is pretty violent. The man in pink on the front is Marco Pantani. Right behind him, though, is Richard Virenque, and the Mapei rider in there as well is Manuel Beltran. But look at that, Kevin Livingston has accelerated nice and slowly to bring Lance Armstrong back into contention.
Well, now the pressure is turning tighter now, as they're going to have to try and answer this attack by Marco Pantani. We will see the time gap come down dramatically up front now. And Roberto Conti-Paul had 57 seconds when this attack came. We'll see how quickly they pick him up.
Well, they'll sweep up to him pretty rapidly as well. You see now Kevin Livingston is swinging across. In fact, I don't think Kevin Livingston is in such a great day. He's looking down there. That's a sign he's looking for an extra gear, and he's actually going to slip away from the group of the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong. But look at that. So is also Jan Ullrich. Ullrich looking down for gears and looking down for help to come from his teammate Giuseppe Guerini.
Well, this is interesting because Ullrich does appear to be in a little bit of oxygen debt right now, as Belocchi is also moving up, and I think indeed Virenka's cracked.
Well, Virenka's cracked there. He was on the wheel of Marco Pantani. Armstrong moved himself up into second place there in the line to sit on the wheel of the Pirate. The Pirate's attack has come. He announced it in the Gazzetta dello Sporto, the Italian sporting newspaper this morning. He said, I'm going to launch into the attack on the slopes of the Izoard and put Armstrong into danger. But you know what? Armstrong is not panicking just now.
Well, this is amazing, but Pantani said he would do it. Now he's doing it. When he attacks this little climber, you see him, he's in and out of the saddle. He's almost sprinting up the hill here, and Armstrong is the only man now who has stayed with him.
Well, Armstrong is right on the back wheel of the Pirate. The Pirate wears number 71. He's had so many nicknames, this man, throughout his career. It started off being Elefantino, but since then he's been adopted as the Pirate.
Yep.
He's the best climber in the world, and now I think this year in the Tour de France, Phil, he's climbing back into that reputation.
Well, he has rode away from Christophe Moreau and Belocchi here, and Jan Ullrich clearly hasn't got the extra kick required to go up to these two. Pantani is aiming, if not for the win, for second. He said when he saw Armstrong attack in the Pyrenees on that climb to Hautecam, he said he'd never seen anything like that in his career, and he was now riding the Tour de France for second place. Well, right now that's exactly what he's doing, because if he continues to ride like this, he will be up in the second place.
He also said that attack by Lance Armstrong put his feet firmly back on the ground. He thought at the start of the Tour de France this year that he would be a serious challenger for the overall victory, but he's going into the Alps with a 10-minute deficit on the American.
And 6 minutes on Ullrich, and he must get those 6 minutes back over the next couple of days, because Ullrich will come back into his own for sure in the final time trial, which are on flatter roads towards the end of the week. Now the boys from Polti have reorganised. The old faithful man, Pascal Hervé, has got hold of Richard Virenque and brought him back up to the front of the chase. There's the latest gap, 3:37 to the leader.
Well, the Alps are certainly the playground of Marco Pantani. This is the slope of the mountain of the Col d'Izoard, and this is where he really announced to the world, Phil, that he was back to the sport of cycling. He really ripped the race to pieces, and on that day, once again, he confirmed that he had come back to the top of the sport. He attacked there quite magnificently with Richard Virenque right on his wheel, but Armstrong was always there.
Just rode him off his wheel, but Armstrong, you're never going to ride this man off anybody's wheel. He was paying attention, and he was straight on to Pantani. He knew it would come. He thought it might have come from Ullrich, I think, but it came from Pantani. As now it's Pascal Hervé, Richard Virenque and the Festina boys, then followed by Telecom with Guerini and Ullrich. They are back in the pack here, and this climb continues to stay at a very steep gradient now.
All the big names are in here. I caught a quick glimpse of the other Kelme rider, the favourite for Kelme before the start of the Tour, Fernando Escartin. He's at the back of this very long group of riders. But I tell you one thing, I have to say Pascal Hervé is doing a magnificent job here for Richard Virenque. Virenque was in the right place, Phil, but he just was not able to lift the pace.
So we're looking now at an attack on the Col d'Izoard, and the field has completely shattered at the moment as the riders continue towards the summit of the Col d'Izoard. Just look here now, Paul. Pascal Hervé has had a very, very good tour this year, and he's always looked out for his man Richard Virenque.
But look at that, gone round the corner, the pink jersey of Marco Pantani and the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong. And again, going out of that corner, the major acceleration came from Marco Pantani. 21 is Fernando Escartin. He's alongside Manuel Beltran. These two men are climbers, and they're being put into difficulty in their own terrain.
Lance is taking up the pacemaking now as well. I'm not sure that's a good sign for Pantani.
Well, I wonder if Lance has read the Gazzetta dello Sporto this morning and he knows what Marco Pantani has been saying about him, because if he has, he will be angry and he will try and blow the Pirate completely out of the water. He is now going to set the pacemaking on the front here, Phil, and one by one he will pick up the remnants of that breakaway.
On the left you see the two yellow and pink jerseys. Down below is the rest of the peloton, and it numbers a total of 4. The rest now are spread all the way down the slopes here at the Col d'Izoard, and this man is in definite trouble because Ulrich is being nursed here by Giuseppe Guerini.
Guerini doing a great job. That is the work of a domestique, to look after the leader whatever his condition, and he waited alongside him and paced him back up to these men.
Looking now at Pascal Richard here, trying to nurse. In fact, he's left Richard Virenque. I don't know where he's gone at the moment. Is he in front or is he behind? We're going to find out, because we're now... Oh, he's coming across to the leaders. They've got Conti. So that yellow jersey of Armstrong and Pantani have now joined Roberto Conti, who not very long ago was a minute in front.
Well, he's just looking across there. In fact, he used to ride alongside Marco Pantani when Pantani went on to win the Tour de France. And in fact, he's now been joined by the two chasers. Hervé has ridden across. Now, this is an unbelievable performance. I can't actually understand why he has done this, because he should have stayed with Virenque.
It can only mean that Richard must have said to him, I've had it, you can do what you like, and he's come across by himself. He's still looking behind, but he's ridden Virenque off his back wheel.
Well, now this group is starting to form again. There's still, let's not forget, a big battle happening on up the road. The race is being led by two riders, Botero and Baranovski, and a few moments ago their advantage was 2.5 minutes. Looking back down the road now, this is a group of select names of the Tour de France: Virenque, Ulrich and Escartine, but Armstrong again is putting the hammer down and trying to get rid of the Pirate.
I think he's getting rid of the Pirate too, because the Pirate's not lifting his pace. He doesn't like to be put under pressure like this. He likes to climb at his own speed. Remember how he rode at Mont Ventoux? He was dropped by the Armstrong group. He rode back and then was able to attack. But I think we are seeing here Lance Armstrong ripping the field apart, and he's going to head up the mountain here in search of Botero.
And where is Pascal Hervé? That wasn't an attack by Armstrong, that was just a mere acceleration. He's proving that he is the strongest bike rider on all terrains, and at the moment he's proving that he is one of the greatest climbers in the world of cycling. A complete change in his physiology, because before, Phil, this man weighed 82 kilograms. Now at the Tour de France he weighs 72. That's 22 pounds or 10 kilos less.
He's probably lost another kilo on this climb, judging by the perspiration running off his face here. But Armstrong has that concentrated look of just lifting the pace here. He knows with every turn of these pedals he is dropping all of his contenders in the Tour de France. Ulrich, Belocchi, Wouters, Moreau and Beltran are all struggling now behind him. And the one man that he won't worry too much about yet, Botero, is out front and looking set to win the stage.
This is another time trial performance by Lance Armstrong, riding completely on his own. He will get into his best rhythm now and ride a time trial on the slopes of this mountain. Pascal Hervé, Phil, has slipped back down the road and waited for Richard Virenque. Virenque now is alongside his teammate. In this group, two riders from Telecom, Giuseppe Guerini and Jan Ulrich. Two riders from Festina, Belocchi and Moreau. These are all the best riders in the overall standings, and they can't follow one man, Lance Armstrong.
This group is certainly a bunch of good boys, but they're not anything like the mark now for Lance Armstrong. They are concentrating on regrouping here. The other Kelme rider here with Escartine is Roberto Heras, as again Hervé is setting the pace. I think you're right, Paul. He's dropped back here to see if he can keep Richard Virenque in the frame.
Well, Virenque obviously wasn't able to follow his teammate there, and this very often happens when a teammate and team leader is put under pressure. Certainly sometimes the domestique becomes a stronger rider on the day, but the domestique doesn't have the pressures of leadership on his shoulders. Hervé has sit up and waited now for his teammate Richard Virenque as Armstrong catches the next man on the road. This is Martin Dimbacher wearing 44. He gets a chance to look at Armstrong and what it's like to lead the Tour de France.
And he's lifted the pace just enough for the moment at least to hang on. 3:17 to Botero. Armstrong, there's still riders in between as well. And as far as we know, Botero is still with Baranovski.
Well, there's still 3.5 minutes advantage for those two leaders on the road ahead of Lance Armstrong. But more importantly, I think, is the fact that the Ulrich group is already 30 seconds behind the Flying Texan.
Well, now I think we're just about over the top here now for Botero, who does appear on his own pole. We don't know where Baranowski is right now, but this man is heading down the Col d'Izoard and racing to a very deserved victory if he can get it. Armstrong is about 3¼ minutes back of him.
Well, there's the fireworks for the 14th of July. That man's about 24 hours too late. Botero now is alone in the lead at the front of the race. I think we've still got a couple of kilometres to go before the summit. This is one of the false flats before we actually crest this mountain, which levels out, Phil, at 2,300 metres.
Which means there is still time for this rider here to pull back. Botero is on his own on the climb. The road getting slightly easier for the moment. Armstrong, whenever he senses he's slowing down, he's out of the saddle and kicks again.
Well, he's a tough bike rider. He knows exactly what he wants to do today. He wants to try and get even more time over the men who challenge him in the overall standings. The closest challenger today was Jan Ullrich at 4 minutes and 55 seconds, but Ullrich is a fair way down the road.
And here come the group now back to Pantani's side and Roberto Conti. They are coming together while Armstrong is as free as you could want now. And look at this, Paul. What is that? 26 seconds back to Ullrich. So Armstrong gaining time over the second overall. Ullrich is now 5½ minutes behind him in the overall classification.
But in fact, Jan Ullrich is having difficulty staying onto the wheel there of the men setting the pace, and that was Hervé and Viron. The Pirate was the man who really went out on the attack, and as the other day on the Mont Ventoux, Armstrong waited and until the Pirate had a slight advantage and leapt across to him and then left him in his wake.
Well, if Ullrich gets dropped, we are looking at Belocchi here, who could be riding himself into second place in the Tour de France, because he's looking for just less than 1 minute advantage.
Well, that's amazing, because there you can see the man who wears 102, Belocchi. He said at the start of the Tour de France, Phil, that I'd be very happy to come here and work for my leaders, and the books have certainly turned the tables there, because in fact he now is the leader of Festina.
Well, we've worked out that it's about 2½ kilometres to the top of the climb for Botero, and then the plunge down to the valley. There is still time here for Armstrong to demonstrate his complete superiority.
Well, at the front of the bike race, you can see it is Botero, but Armstrong catching more riders who've been caught in the middle. The man who is going to go past right now is the man who was in this leading breakaway of 8. It's John Odriozola from Banesto. The other rider is the Kelme rider who started off the breakaway, Pasquale Lorente. One at a time, Armstrong is catching those riders who started this climb more than 3½ minutes ahead of him.
And Javier Pascal Lorente is having a little second life here as he latches on to the back of Lance Armstrong. Odriozola comes on as well, so they've managed, they were lucky there, they were caught on that false flat. Here's the rider now who's heading up towards the summit, right in the distance there, at the top of the mountain. That is the top of the Col d'Izoard. And here he is now thinking, I hope of a win, because he deserves it. He has been on the attack daily, this rider, and certainly with the maximum points for the all-category climb, he's going to be the new leader in the King of the Mountains.
He will get a massive advantage because his teammate is a long way down the road. We haven't seen the leader of the King of the Mountains competition for an awful long time, but great tactical manoeuvres here by Kelme. Every day, Phil, they're leapfrogging a different rider forward on these mountain stages. These two will be happy to stay with Armstrong for the moment, but we are on a false flat, an easier part of the course. But once again, once we tilt up towards the summit, they will be left gasping for breath.
I think you're right. Armstrong again raising the pace here.
Raising the pace too much for John Odriozola there. He's out of the back.
There's the flag that Lance would like to see waved, and it was as he comes up. We're going back to the next group here now. Ullrich has got himself latched back onto the back of it.
Well, Ullrich has managed to get up there, and he will try and recuperate a little bit for a kilometre or so on the flatter part of the course. This group we're looking at here is all of the major leaders, and what it does prove, Phil, is that Lance Armstrong is head and shoulders above everybody else. But in fact, Ullrich is starting to recover, and his group is coming back to Armstrong.
Yes, indeed. Slight recovery here, because Armstrong, I think, impaired a little bit by the two riders he picked up, and they've hung on to his back wheel. Pantani there looking as though he's not feeling so good right now, though.
He's on the wheel of Richard Virenque, and just moving back down the line there is Pascal Hervé. Hervé has done a great job so far, but you can see all of these men really are struggling to stay at a decent rhythm on the slopes of this climb.
And the race referees are losing their temper with the race motorbikes, which are getting too close to these riders at the moment and not giving them room enough for the attacks, because this is big showdown here on the Izoard. It's the rest of the race versus Lance Armstrong, and right now Lance Armstrong is winning.
Well, Hervé has come back to the front. He's found some resources from somewhere. In fact, they're not very far behind Armstrong. You can just see the group in front of them. That is the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong, still with Pasquale Lorente, the Kelme rider.
Well, remember that Pasquale Lorente was on the attack on the first climb of the Col d'Alos, and he's still in at the thick end of it on the climb of the Izoard. But it looks, and I'm very surprised to see this, Paul, as though they are going to get him back.
Well, I think they are. The time gap there was only around about 10 seconds. Maybe Armstrong over-assumed on his strength there when he jumped away. He's around about 1 kilometre from the summit of the climb, and the next man he will catch is Jens Heppner in the pink and white there. He was in that early breakaway group of 8.
Well, Heppner's done extremely well to hang out there as long as he has, but now Armstrong is coming up to him. Pasquale Lorente is hanging on, and just behind our camera, the group also is coming back to Lance's side. But the Col d'Izoard is almost history in this year's Tour.
It certainly is. Armstrong looking back to see what the position is of the other bike riders in this group. This is the man at the front of the bike race. He's not very far in front either, Phil, because he's just coming up to the summit, and Armstrong has gone past the banner indicating 1 kilometre to go. This is the leader of the bike race, wearing number 22, Santiago Botero.
Well, a wonderful feeling for him as he sweeps round to claim the big scalp here at the top of the Col d'Izoard. Now, can he hang on? Can he increase his lead on the very twisty descent down to the bottom and the short uphill which will take him to the finishing line? He goes over the top. Odriozola should be still in second place, but we haven't seen him at all.
Armstrong now about to get caught by the group containing all of the other favourites. He's dominated them completely on this climb. The attacks came, he rode off the front, but maybe he's decided that he doesn't really want to use too much energy today, because there are still 2 more very difficult days in the mountains to come.
Well, I said Odriozola, I meant Baranowski is the rider we haven't seen. Odriozola's been caught by this group and dropped behind, but I'm not too sure whether Darius Baranowski hasn't fallen fate to the same now, because this little group has come back together again now, and it looks as though the attack by Armstrong failed and the others have clawed their way back up here.
Well, Armstrong, I think, showing his strength on that climb, but maybe deciding he didn't want to ride all the way to the finish. He's going back down the group now, looking at the faces of the other riders in the group with him. Virenque must be fairly happy to be there at the moment, but they've all been put into difficulty by that attack of Armstrong, and this really, Phil, I feel, is a huge gap on the slopes of the Col d'Izoard.
But you know, the riders might take heart by the fact that Armstrong didn't ride them away. He was tempted onto the attack because of the attack of Pantani, not because he himself wanted to create that move. And when he saw his chance, he thought he may as well have a go and see what he could gain. But he hasn't gained anything at all.
One man we haven't seen coming back either, Phil, is Paolo Salvadelli. In fact, here he is now. He's coming up to the top. He's caught Baranowski. There's Baranowski in third position there on the road. Second position behind Salvadelli. I've had the watch going, and it's around about 1.5 minutes since that first man went over the top, Botero, and Salvadelli may well treat us to an incredible descent.
Well, it's certainly something to behold if he does, and he's over the top. I think he's going to get second place unless Darius Baranowski produces the sprint. He's not really a contender for the King of the Mountains, so he's in fact he is going to get second though. Darius Baranowski's done well there to go over the top in second place. Now, can he hang on to the wheels of the Falcon, as the Falcon now will be thinking of a stage win here?
Well, that's what he wants, and that's why he rode as hard as he did on the slopes here of the Col d'Izoard. He knows he is a great descender, and he will do everything that he can to try and pull back the Colombian. I do feel, Phil, that he has got a great chance and the ability to do that. But in the group behind, all of the major contenders are here. We've had a flurry of attacks, but it's actually come to nothing.
And Pascal Hervé has got back on the front ahead of Richard Virenque here, Pasquale Lorente. Moreau and Bolocchi are here. Festino will be delighted with that. Richard Virenque would like to have gone away. He's going to try and get some points out the King of the Mountains, but there's plenty of riders, it seems, wants the challenge as well. As Hervé tries to lead him out, Lance Armstrong isn't giving him any room to move at all.
Well, there's only 2 riders from the top 10 really missing from this group, and the one rider, in fact, is Mark Wouters, who was 4th overall, and Manuel Beltran, who has been riding very well for Mapei. He too has slipped away from this very select leading group. Richard Virenque leads them over for 4th place on the road.
4th place, Lance Armstrong, Marco Pantani. That's the order over the top here of the Col d'Izoard. Now back to the leader, who is going to have to sprout wings and fly if he's going to hold off the rest behind him.
and hold off the man who has got the nickname of a flying bird, the Falcon, Il Falco. Paolo Salvadelli will love this descent. He will go down here like a man possessed, and these corners are where he will not even touch his brakes at all at speeds, Phil, which will touch at times 110 kilometers an hour.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have a motorbike camera with Salvadelli. We're staying up with the leader quite rightly. He's now around about 21 kilometers from the finish. The banner must be pretty close, actually, to the 20 kilometers to go point. Back to the mountain here, and Beltran and Co. as we look here at the group behind.
In that group there is Jens Hettner, a great ride by him today, surviving from that leading group of 8 riders. Daniele Nardella was the other rider in there from Mapei, and today he is working for his teammate who started the day in 6th place overall.
Well, over the top of the climb, Botero has given himself a gap of just 2 minutes and 1 second over Baranowski and Salvadelli. And now we're going to see if they can catch up. Here is the leader, and he looks as though he's not such a hot descender.
Well, he locked up the back wheel there. That was a very bad maneuver by him. The reason for that was a certain amount of panic, and he pulled the back brake on too rapidly there. That is something you have to be very careful of as we look now at the leader of the King of the Mountains competition, which I feel sorry for him today because he will have lost that to his own teammate, Santiago Botero, who was the first man over the summit of this climb. You can see this man is slowing down dramatically going into those corners, and I wish we could get back up the road just to see the position of Paolo Salvadelli, because he will fly around these corners.
Well, he desperately wants to make more of it, but the Kelme team, a greater team as they are, have a nasty reputation of falling off. And in fact, they seem to do it quite often. They certainly did in this year's Tour of Italy, but they always have the habit of recovering well and still winning prizes. These are 2 other members of the Kelme team here. They are in the Ulrich group just now. 3:05, so it's a good descent so far. He's actually increased his lead over Armstrong by 2 seconds.
But in the middle, caught in the middle of nowhere, is Paolo Salvadelli and Darius Baranowski. They're trying to pull themselves back up to the leading rider on the road. It gives you an idea of just how fast these bike riders go down this descent, Phil. He is taking all kinds of risks. He's now just over 15 kilometers to go to the finish, and he will not be touching his brakes at all until he comes towards the corners.
Well, we can reckon on at least 1 kilometre a minute right now, so about 15 minutes from the line for this rider. And that's about what the men behind have got to reel him back in. But it's a case of slamming on the brakes for those sharp right-hand hairpin bends. You'll get just about some acceleration down here before you do it all again. He's looking good just now, though.
The important thing about descending fast is actually making sure that you're in the right gear coming into these corners as well, because you slow down from speeds which can be as much as 100 kilometers an hour down to 35 kilometers an hour in the corners, and then you have to accelerate as quickly as possible in the right gear up to speed once again.
Well, somewhere in between, and we can't find him at the moment, is the red jersey of the Falcon, Paolo Salvadelli. And the reason they call him the Falcon is because he descends out the sky, and that's how the peregrine falcon kills its prey, by dropping out the sky at 100 miles an hour. And that's what I think Salvadelli needs to do now to pick up this rider here.
We just saw there 80 kilometers an hour for this man leading the bike race, Santiago Botero. 50 miles an hour he is descending now, and you can see the descent is starting to straighten out. He doesn't have to worry so much now. There are not quite so many very dangerous corners. He will keep the pace high. You see how he swings across to the left-hand side of the road, Phil, and then uses the apex of the corner so as not to lose very much of his momentum.
Well, he would like probably a slightly bigger gear right now to drive on down towards Briançon as we pass these chalets with the sharp roofs, and that's because of the snow which falls here in the winter as they come down very, very quickly now towards Briançon. Almost looks like a cardboard backdrop, the mountains ahead of him. This has been a superb piece of riding. As we go back up the mountain here, Nico Matan is coming up the mountain now, and Abraham Olano is the man just in front of him. And another dreadful day in the Tour de France for Olano.
Well, Olano's had a very difficult Tour de France. He certainly hasn't been the great climber, the great contender we expected him to be. And the US Postal rider on the back of that group is Kevin Livingston. Livingston did his job for Lance Armstrong today, and around about 7 kilometers from the summit he had to swing off, and now he's just surviving because tomorrow he'll have to come out and do exactly the same job again.
So save as much energy as he possibly can. He'll be delighted to know that team captain Lance is right up where it matters with the men around him who would endanger his overall lead, so there'll be no change of significance in the overall classification of the Tour de France at the end of this first day in the Alps, except this rider here. If he can squeeze out enough time, he will certainly be a top 10 contender by the start tomorrow.
The next group to come up, in fact, contains Alex Zuller, and Alex Zuller is in the group here with Cedric Vasseur. As we look at the small Spanish climber there, Leonardo Pipoli. Alex Zuller today fell losing more than 10 minutes on the slopes of the Izoard.
He's the rider that finished second to Lance Armstrong last year on almost every stage that Lance won, and second overall. Looks like somebody's giving him a copy of the Italian newspaper La Gazzetta dello Sport, which sponsors the Tour of Italy, and up his jumper to keep the wind out on the way down, because although the sun is shining, it is quite cold here on the mountains today.
Well, over the top of the mountains, it's around about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, but it's the chill factor which makes it very cold on the descents because of the speeds which can be in excess of 100 kilometers an hour. For the moment, we don't have any time check on the two riders behind, but in fact, it has come down very little. It's 1 minute and 50 seconds to Salvadelli and Darius Baranovsky.
Well, Botero is riding like a demon today, his first Tour de France, and he could be on for one of the finest wins here, which has crossed the Col d'Izoard, and he's done it the way that everybody who wins stages would love to do. He left the leaders of the Tour, he caught the breakaways, and on the final climb he's ridden away from them.
Il suo esempio rimane per tutti un punto di riferimento di come si possa praticare lo sport con una grande carica umana e spirituale.
Pope John Paul II eulogising a good Catholic and a great cyclist, Italy's Gino Bartali, who died earlier this year. And you know, Bartali, of all people, would have recognised just what an historic stage today's is, because the great Alpine trinity of the Allo, the Var and the Izoard haven't been climbed together on the road to Briançon since 1949, when Bartali won an epic victory. In fact, during his career, Bartali won this stage 3 times, something which has been achieved by only one other rider, Louison Bobet. But even Bobet couldn't manage what Bartali did in 1938, which was not only win the stage, but lead the race over all 3 of those huge climbs. Whoever wins today's stage is going to be in pretty high altitude company as far as Tour history is concerned.
Yes, Gary, and but for the World War, I wonder how many Tours Bartali would have won apart from the 2 he got.
Well, Richard Virenque has jumped away from the group of Lance Armstrong. He too is a pretty risky descender when it comes to taking risks, and he's pushed himself off the front of the yellow jersey group, which contains Escartin, Armstrong and Ulrich. He's trying to ride himself across a 3-minute gap at the moment, and I would say for Richard that is almost impossible. But what he's trying to do is maybe move himself a little higher towards the position of being best Frenchman in this Tour de France, the position currently being held by Christophe Moreau, who started the day off in 5th.
Well, certainly he needs a minute, Paul, to even get up to 6th place overall, and that's held by Manuel Beltran, who is behind in the group, so he has a chance here of moving up the overall tonight. Does Richard Virenque, as the Kelme boys are massing in that chase group now, and the official cars are picked up. They've got the message that Virenque is coming down the mountain like a train. 10 kilometers to go now for the leader, just 6 miles from the finish. His team manager there just willing him on here for what will be a magnificent win, not just for Santiago Botero, but also for the Kelme team. And what a stage to win, the longest stage in the Alps. He's tongue out, he's gritting his teeth. Virenque is looking to bridge 3 minutes.
He ain't going to do that, not with 10 kilometers to go. Almost certainly the victory is going to go to Santiago Botero, and what a great Tour de France so far for the Kelme squad. If he can hold on, that will give them their 2nd stage victory after the incredible stage victory of Ochoa on the slopes of Otakam, and that will give Kelme 2 of the biggest mountain stages so far.
Now Lance Armstrong, I'm not too sure what he's saying to Pantani, but these riders now, the race is played for this day. They've got to rethink the tactics again tomorrow, because the obstacles of the day are now behind. It's a question of just going home to the finish at Briançon. Out front, the riders are racing for the stage win, but Armstrong, Ulrich, Berlocchi and Moreau are still in here in this group. The man missing is Mark Wouters. We expected that. He's not a great climber at this level of climbing, and he'll slip away from the 4th place overall.
I think another day where Lance Armstrong will be quite satisfied with his performance. He was expecting the big attacks to come from Jan Ulrich. That one never materialized, but the attack did come from Marco Pantani, and he pretty rapidly neutralized that and put Marco back in his place, slipping into the group behind him.
Mark will be a top 10 player now in the Tour de France, having climbed from 136th. That was where he finished in the time trial on the opening day of the Tour de France. Now he'll be in the top 10 for sure after this stage.
This man is looking along the road now, waiting to see the outskirts of Briançon, where we are at the moment. He's only got one small climb up to the finish line, but it will hurt as he comes up through the streets of the city.
It certainly will, but for any other man, I say it would worth hurt. Paul, for this rider, he is going to feel so inspired. There's a situation now, Botero leading in the King of the Mountains, a nice lead over his teammate Ochoa. They've not really been in rivalry for that polka dot jersey. There'll be no ill feeling tonight in the Kelme Hotel. It's just the way it's all worked out. Botero clearly a man on form.
A man on form, but the thing about the tactics is what they have done. They've kept Richard Virenque out of the maximum points. This man was trying to get a 6th title at the Tour de France in the King of the Mountains competition, and he will continue to fight for that over the next few days as well. But for the moment, I think the Kelme have the better of him.
All downhill till we get to Briançon. He said Draguignan. We don't want to go back there right now, which is some 240 kilometres behind the riders today, as this has been a really tough day. They started sensibly at slow speeds, but once onto the mountains, they have blown the race apart.
And another tough day in the mountains as well tomorrow, because once they leave the start here from Briançon, it climbs up almost immediately over the Col de Lautaret and the Col de Galibier. One man trying to get an advantage for himself over the other guys in this group is Richard Virenque. He's 3 minutes and 12 seconds behind Botero. He is not pulling back anything at all.
There's still 2 riders between this rider and Botero. That is Baranevski and Sabadelli. Now, they've given us a time check on Baranevski, but we haven't had any word at all on the whereabouts of Sabadelli.
Well, I would be surprised, in fact, if Baranowski could have stayed with Sabadelli, because he is a madman on the descents, and he will be taking some serious risks trying to get himself up here to the leading rider on the road, number 22, Santiago Botero. This is the group of the main contenders who today, although they did come out and fight over this 250-kilometre stage, will have to call it a truce, because nobody has proved so far that they've got the advantage, but there's still 2 very tough alpine stages to go.
Well, it looks as though Lance Armstrong's group there, that's why I was hesitating, are coming back to the back wheel of Richard Virenque. So they're pulling him back in, which will leave this man now clear as a bird to win the day.
Look at the power that he's trying to find now, Phil. He's been at the front of the bike race for a long time. He's digging very deep over these last few kilometres, because he knows he has to keep pushing along. He knows that behind him on the road, Sabadelli is eating into his advantage, and every time the road goes down, he will cut across these corners to try and keep his momentum up as high as possible. He knows also that he's only got around about 8 or 9 minutes of racing left, and then he will face the final uphill ascent to the finish line here, where there's a huge crowd awaiting him.
Well, he is now a superstar if he wins this stage in the Tour de France. There's the surrender of Richard Virenque, and up comes the group containing Lance Armstrong, Santiago Botero, who's been a pro not very long indeed, and in fact he's 27 years of age. He's the only Colombian still in the Tour de France, and he's going to get them a stage win.
Well, there's the juncture. There is Richard Virenque being caught. The work on the front there being done by Jens Hempner for Telecom. Interesting to point out that Jan Ullrich has 2 teammates up alongside him there. The second man in the Telecom squad there is Giuseppe Guerini. Marco Pantani now is quite happy to take a back seat and hope that he can come out and fight again on one of the next alpine stages.
This is going to go down as a superb result for Botero, there's no doubt about that. He's in his 5th season as a professional. He's only ever won a total of 5 races, and he's always been loyal to the Kelme team.
A quick time check coming through there, Phil. In fact, Baranowski and Sabadelli are still together, but in fact Botero has extended his lead over them. He's now 2 minutes and 37 seconds ahead of the second 2 riders on the road, and 3 minutes 15 seconds back to the Lance Armstrong group. So this man from Colombia has made an unbelievable daredevil descent.
Most of his racing, Paul, looking at his record here, has always been mostly in Colombia, and the odd win, and it is the odd win, he's only got 5 in total in Spain, but now he's really found his legs here, and he's come to his first Tour de France with his finest form. No wins this year. That's about to change.
There's Savardelli, the Falcon. He thought he could get across there to the leading group. On the descent, he's tried very hard indeed, but today, unfortunately for him, he's failed. He was just a little too far behind over the summit of the final climb of the day, the Col d'Izoard. If it had been 1 minute, I think he may well have made the junction.
He may well have done, but I think he's found a man inspired in Santiago Botero. He came training here for the Tour de France a couple of months ago, and he crashed and he broke his left arm. Now it's recovered, he's come back, and he's surviving now to win a stage of the Tour de France in the Alps.
Lance Armstrong, wearing number 1, looks very happy in this group. He expected the challenges to come today, they did, and he was able to respond to them very admirably. No problem at all for him today, but you can see he has no teammates at all left around him. And once again, on the mountain stages, when the going has got tough, he's found himself isolated.
Well, there's 12 riders down there. Most of them are close, except Mark Wouters, 2 Lance Armstrong, and he's got them all under control at 3 minutes and 11 seconds down.
Well, Botero will move himself up to around about 11th or 12th in the overall standings, but I think more importantly, Phil, is he will be actually wearing the leader's jersey of the King of the Mountains tomorrow. He has made an incredible descent here. He's resisted the comeback of Paolo Savardelli, the man with the biggest reputation on the descents. And in fact, it appears that Savardelli has been left behind by Baranovsky on the descent of this climb.
I think Botero will just about make the top 12 now with this performance today, and he might well, considering the fact that Mark Wouters isn't here, he might be even better than that, because Wouters losing big time today. And no news at all on the British rider David Miller. We certainly haven't been told he's given up, and that in itself is a good thing. As now we drop into Briançon here for the finish. Savardelli it should be, not Salvadelli. It's S-A-V. You often call him Salvadelli though, as he now runs into the finish here, Botero, towards the line.
Well, 2 kilometers to go, and the last 1 kilometer is slightly uphill. This is Savardelli out on the course, the man who is hoping to pull off the victory today, but he just lost a little bit too much time, Phil, on the slopes of that final climb of the day.
So Botero now will shortly be starting the little climb away from the village up to the banks, high above the town, right by the old town here, the beautiful old city of Briançon, the area which was all these beautiful forts built to keep out the Italians. Well, they forgot. They should have built them in the other direction and kept out the Colombians.
This is the final ascent of the day for this man. Wears number 22. He has been absolutely formidable on the slopes of the Col d'Izoard. He now has this final uphill drag. You can see at the top of this long straight, Phil, there is the red kite, which indicates he will have just 1,000 meters left to finish.
And he's got the gap. He's got all of the gap he needs here over the race now. Savardelli might get second, but he won't get first, as this rider now, he's going to ride this on fresh air. He's ridden so well today, coming from the back of the field after obviously a plan well talked through last night amongst the Kelme camp to launch Javier Pascual Lorente on the attack on the Col d'Alos. And even though he got caught, he went again on the next climb of the Col de Vars. This man then saw his chance, got away from the group Armstrong, caught up with the leaders, and then, as planned, after the pacemaking by Pascual Lorente on the Col d'Izoard, he went by himself, and he's going to win the day.
I think the impressive thing about his performance, Phil, is in fact that he jumped across the gap when it was 2.5 minutes. He was in the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, and there was that leading group of 7 up the road, and he rode steadily across the gap and made the junction. Used his teammate Pascual Lorente sensibly, but now you can see he's actually been at the front of the bike race for a long time, and it is really hurting. This is a real sting in the tail here in the slopes of Briançon.
I think it's rather mean of the organisation not to give it points for the King of the Mountains, because this is a cruel finish here. He comes right up the bank and onto the top road before he'll cross the finishing line. He's checking on whether anybody's creeping up on him, because I think he's just about running out of gas in those legs. They're almost dead on him now with 1,000 and a bit more meters to go to the line. But he is going to hang on, and he is going to get the win. He's threatened now. Eric Decker, who took the win off him after that breakaway of more than 200 kilometers. Well, Eric Decker will be a long, long way behind him today.
Well, he's under the Flamme Rouge now, the red kite indicating 1,000 meters, and that really there is the final corner. He can see it, but he probably won't know it because the road does level off once he gets to it. He's really digging deep now, Phil. This is a very tough finish after a long breakaway and a long stage of almost 250 kilometers. And for this man here, he's been in the saddle now for over 8 hours.
A tremendous feat in the Tour de France today for all of the riders crossing in this first day of 3 really tough days in the Alps. This is only day 1, and Santiago Botero, we really should have picked him out at the start. He's threatened to do something special, and today he didn't let us down. He's going to climb to a top 12 place in the Tour de France, and he still has a couple of days, if he's got the legs left after a ride like this, to push home his advantage again tomorrow on the Col de Galibier and on the Col de Jouplin on the day 3 in the Alps of the Tour de France. What a long climb this is turning out to be. It's cruel to finish a race like this through the Alps. A massive crowd though cheering him all the way up it.
Well, I tell you what, he's really suffered up this last 1.5 kilometers here in Briançon, but very shortly he will see the finishing line in front of him, and he will then be able to breathe a sigh of relief. Out on the road, the race has been unbelievable behind him, but this man really took the race by the horns and attacked when there was a group of 7 riders more than 2.5 minutes in front of him, but he timed it to perfection.
It gets a little bit easier now as he lines up for the finishing line, and the crowd, who have been here for the best part of 8 hours as well. They were here last night too because there was a marvellous firework display celebrating Bastille Day at 11 o'clock last night, and now they've stayed on for the arrival of the Tour de France and a Colombian cyclist in his first tour getting the great victory here, and he might beat the 8 hours as well.
Well, he'll be pretty happy about that, but there'll be a lot of riders out on the bike field for more than 8 hours and 45 minutes. But for this man, Santiago Botero, it's the last few minutes of this very long, difficult stage.
Will the top of this climb ever come, he says to himself. This is harder than the Col d'Izoard because the pressure is on him now to survive to the line. His first prize, 50,000 French francs, but more than that, he'll never be an anonymous rider in the Tour de France again. He has won the big blue ribbon of the race so far. Crossing the line, Santiago Botero gets the victory, and lower down the slopes, the chase is on.
Well, this is the sprint now for 4th place on the road. This is Joseba Bellocchi, the man who started the day in 3rd place overall. He's marked there by Richard Virenque and Marco Pantani. Armstrong is very happy just to stay in this group here, Phil, with Jan Ullrich.
Well, Pantani, this is Baranowski, and he's being caught on the final climb here as the group comes up. So Savadelli is the only rider surviving in front of this group. They are now racing here, 1 kilometre to go for 3rd place.
Well, Bellocchi now is going to try and accelerate in a few moments' time. In fact, Savadelli should come across the finishing line for 2nd, but Armstrong has closed down the gap on this acceleration.
And Joseba Bellocchi is still prepared to hurt these riders. What a find he's been this year in the Tour de France. Armstrong had a magnificent first day in the Alps, conceding nothing to anybody of importance because Botero is still too far behind him overall. All of his rivals are here or behind him.
Well, he's really had put out the master plan today. Marco Pantani now is trying to get himself off the front of this group. This will be for 3rd place, and that was very much the sort of place that he looked at in the Giro d'Italia. Giuseppe Bellocchi there for the Festina rider has let the pirate fly.
I don't think they can catch him this time. He's got that look in his eye, if you could see his eyes behind those sunglasses. This time Pantani has decided this is the big sprint, and they haven't quite organised themselves yet because they're thinking of not losing time, and if they sprint to Pantani and blow, they will lose time because they'll split time the riders at the line today, and Pantani has accelerated, the old familiar acceleration we've seen around the mountains of the Tour.
Well, Pantani, what a kick that was. He opened up a large advantage over everybody else there. This is really mainly for pride more than anything else. He's not worried about finishing 3rd on the stage, but the psychological blow to the rest of the team.
Go on, here comes the man in 2nd place, Paolo Savadelli. It's a good result for him today. Had a very poor Giro d'Italia in the end, having finished 2nd in that race a year ago.
Well, Savadelli tried to come down the mountain, tried to pick up the man at the front of the bike race, but his descending skills didn't help him this afternoon because Santiago Botero was never going to get caught. But the Falcon will be happy with this 2nd place for him on one of the toughest stages of the Tour de France so far.
So 2 minutes 29 for Sabadell as he comes over the line. Now the Pirate launches himself to third place, as I don't think they'll come up to him now. So Marco Pantani, he jealously guards the mountains, which is his favourite terrain. He gets third, and at the sprint now right behind him, it is going to be Escartine who comes in ahead of the rest of the group at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So what a great day for Lance Armstrong. He keeps all of his gains in the Tour de France, but the one name on the block that everybody will talk about today is that of Santiago Botero. He wins by 2.5 minutes over Paolo Sabadell, and Marco Pantani, virtue of that late attack in the last kilometre, gets third place on the stage, 2:46 back. Lance Armstrong finished 7th, but around in the two men he fears most in the same time, Ulrich and Bolocki. Mark Wouters lost an enormous 36 minutes 35 seconds. He finished in the same group as our David Miller, and as soon as he finished, a depressed David Miller spoke to Gary Imlach.
David, at least that's the longest stage in the mountains over with. How are you bearing up?
Nah, horrible. I think that's just fucking... Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's just ridiculous. I mean, just 8.5 hours on a bike is not a sport. It's sadomasochism on a major scale. I just think it's ridiculous. And
another hard stage tomorrow, but at least the rest days in sight after that.
Tomorrow is just going to be a joke. I'm not looking forward to it. Everybody's tired, and I think I hope everyone will have enough brains to take it easy for as long as possible. But I'm not too impressed at the moment. 8.5 hours on the bike after 2 weeks of racing. It doesn't make much sense to me.
Obviously David's worst day so far, and after his problems these past few days, I think we can all understand that. Tonight on the podium tonight, not just a new stage winner, but also a new leader in the King of the Mountains competition. So it really was a great day for Santiago Botero. Overall, though, a superb day also for Lance Armstrong. No time losses at all, and Christophe Moreau is now back in 4th place in the race. Armstrong keeps his gains despite what Marco Pantani allegedly said in an Italian newspaper this morning about what he would do to Armstrong on the climbs. After the finish, Paul Sherwin asked Lance what he felt about the comments.
We saw a couple of little chats between you and Pantani on the descent. What did he have to say to you?
I read some stuff in the paper this morning, and Marco said it was, I thought, a little wrong. That's why I asked him about it earlier on the stage, and he said, said he doesn't talk to the press in a year, so he doesn't know how I got in there. I believe him, whatever, and I was just kind of joking with him, because when he took off on the Izoard, he was flying.
He was indeed, and Marco Pantani is now up to 9th place overall in the Tour, and there's still a lot of fight in those legs, I think. Mark Wouters, he came up yesterday, he's gone a long way down the overall classification today. David Miller is 64th, and let's hope he can regain his morale in time for tomorrow's start. Hello again and welcome now to stage 15. The riders coming away from Briançon to here at Courchevel. Yes, the sun is shining here, but believe me, it is extremely cold. And where Gary Imlach is, well, I think it's even a tad colder.
Thanks, Phil. Welcome to Ski Sunday. And just in case you'd forgotten, here's Lance Armstrong with a reminder.
I mean, it's July, for Christ's sakes. It should be warm and sunny.
Well, when Lance Armstrong gets up here, I think he might be tempted to revise his opinion. This is the Col du Galibier at 2,645 metres. It's the high point of this year's Tour. Somehow, though, I don't think it's going to be the high point of this stage for the riders. It's not actually snowing up here, but the snow that fell a few days ago is gusting about in the strong winds. And with the thermometer already reading -2, it's got to be closer to -10 with the wind chill factor. If the sun can burn off the cloud cover that's covering most of the mountain, things might improve. Otherwise, it's going to be a very nasty first climb of the day for the riders.
141 riders leaving Briançon today, bound for the dizzy heights again of the Alps. The new king of the mountains is Santiago Botero, and I must say he looks very strong indeed. On the climb of the Col du Galibier, there's little action and relaxed atmosphere too. Lance Armstrong here making light with David Miller.
Hey, minute time! What's up, baby? What are you doing in the back?
I'm waiting for the car, man.
Oh, you are?
And the weather on the climb, well, as you can see, it's better now than when Gary Imlach was up there a couple of hours earlier. And on the climb too, the riders hardly raise the pedal in anger. virtually the whole peloton snaking its way to the summit. And once they went over the top, it was Pascal Hervé looking over his shoulder here to see where Richard Virenque was, and the answer was virtually nowhere. Therefore, Pascal Hervé takes the top of the climb, followed over by the new king of the mountains, Botero, then Roberto Conte, and Richard Virenque going over in 5th place indeed. Lance Armstrong, by the way, he went over the top in 7th place. Massimiliano Lelli just passing through to the left of our picture there, as he's the Cofidis boy in the breakaway today. 2 riders have abandoned the Tour so far. The champion of the Netherlands, who won the stage into Tours, Leon van Bonn, has gone. First man to go for the Dutch Rabobank team. And the rider who got up as high as 2nd overall, Fabrice Gugo, has now abandoned just a few moments ago. And he's gone from the Crédit Agricole team. So there are only 2 teams left now of the original 20 who are still full 9-man complement. And one is Lance Armstrong, the race leader's US Postal team, and the other one is the Banesto squad. And here we come now with Jose Luis Arrieta setting the pace for Banesto, but this is a strange start to the day really. All of the heads of the race have let the breakaway go again. Familiar names. Ochoa here has been a prominent rider. That was a brilliant escape. You'll always remember it on the road to Otakam when he broke away with Nico Matan, then rode away on his own and finished as a stage winner, only just as Lance Armstrong gave him a 10-minute start on the last climb and finished 42 seconds behind him.
Unbelievable, what a chase back that was, and I think everybody had their fingers crossed hoping that Ochoa would win the stage, because he certainly deserved to win the stage after such a long breakaway like that. Looking here, Phil, at the work being done at the front of this group by the Team Telecom, it makes me think that maybe in the back of his mind Jan Ullrich is thinking about the victory here, because this climb up to Courchevel is, although a very long climb at around about 22 kilometers of climbing, it's not really a very steep climb. It's only 6%, and that is the kind of climb that would really suit Jan Ullrich. Ullrich is a very strong bike rider, and I think on the steeper gradients he's very often put into difficulty. So the reason we're seeing Team Telecom come to the front now is because they want to close down the advantage on that group, which, as you can see, is coming down quite quickly now, 3 minutes 45 seconds, and maybe they are trying to set up the day for Ullrich.
But looking down from the helicopter there, you see the tempo by the Telecom boys. They've really disintegrated the peloton again. There is another reasonable sized group come round, but they've already started to drop off on the first 5 kilometers of the climb, and the tempo being held by Telecom.
Well, the tempo there, in fact, has blown out a man who came to the Tour de France with very high hopes. He wears number 171, and his name is Bobby Julich. Finished 3rd in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, but this year he certainly has never found or shown us the fact that he has got any kind of the form that took him to 3rd place behind Jan Ullrich and Pantani.
Yeah, poor old Bobby really hasn't found his form this time, and he's had a bit of a struggle the whole way around. Now Armstrong always near the front, keeping an eye on who is doing what as he rides 4th place here. But already, Paul, he looks as though he's been isolated. Just, I think, 2 of his team members left.
Well, the best 2 as well, because there in front of him you can see is Kevin Livingston, the man who's been a great partner for him on the mountain passes. And sitting on his tail there, in fact, is Tyler Hamilton. And Tyler Hamilton is sitting behind Armstrong at the moment, just in case Armstrong were to have any kind of technical problem or any kind of mechanical problem on the slopes of this climb. If he did see Lance Armstrong having a flat tire, you would probably see a situation where in fact Tyler Hamilton would take out his wheel and pass it to Armstrong's machine.
Well, there's a Festina rider pulled off to the left of the road there and was gesticulated at by one of the other teams, but he's gone. And I've seen all 4 riders in the overall classification right here on the sharp end. So they're marking each other very, very well indeed. Back up to the leaders now, and it looks as though Camesso is doing what Paul thought might happen, and that's lose contact with the leaders. And it's Vidal who is coming backwards with him.
Well, the big pressure in a group like this, Phil. We've had 8 riders together at the bottom of this climb, and the unfortunate thing for Salvatore Camesso is the fact that they were all very good climbers. I'm surprised to see Jose Angel Vidal getting dropped off the back here, but the big tempo on the front today is being done by the Banesto team, and they still have 3 riders in this leading group. So the advantage in the team prize at the moment is tilting towards Banesto, and that is why they have gone out on the attack like this to try and increase their lead. They currently lead Kelme in that competition by over 5 minutes.
6 who are left on your screen, completed by Lely. As we look at Nardello at the back, I don't think he'll be placed in too much difficulty just now. He's a pretty strong climber in a group like this. And hats off to the hard work being done by the two Telecom riders, because they're cracking this big field. Armstrong coming up, sitting on the wheel there of Kevin Livingstone. Tyler Hamilton sitting, as Paul said, right behind him. Nardello, by the way, is 15th overall. And so he's having a pretty good tour, although we haven't seen him in the breakaways too often. None of note anyway.
Well, he's a very tough bike rider and a man who is always consistent. He's able to work on the mountain stages for team leaders who are looking at an overall standings, but he's also the sort of rider who will work on the flat stages for the sprinters as well. The kind of guy that any of the top teams would certainly like to have in their ranks. He has in the past finished frequently inside the top 15 at the Tour de France while working for men like Pavel Tonkov.
Big effort being made by Benesto boys now, although looking at the others, they're following pretty casually. Or at least they appear to be from the rear view. You can never see the faces, that's the giveaway. But our cameras aren't allowed too often alongside the riders, because obviously they're not allowed to shield them from the wind or help them innocently enough. Now we're back to the chase group here of Armstrong and Pantani. Now it looks as though Zerberg's in a spot of bother now, Paul, because there goes the champion of Switzerland off the back.
Well, that was not surprising really, because he's not a great mountain climber, but in fact the Bonjour rider, Phil, who managed to get across there was in fact Jean-Cyril Robin. We were actually talking this morning that we hadn't even heard about him in the Tour de France this year, and here he is popping up for the first time on one of the mountain stages.
Bronze medalist in the World Championships, Robin. We haven't hardly seen him on this tour. As the race continues apace here, it looks as though it's Atienza who's got away here. And it wasn't Savadelli for Seiko keeping the pace on, but I think he's wasting his time, because that group looks to me as though it's coming up pretty quickly.
They're very rapid to be attentive today, I think, on the slopes of this climb, because I think one or two of the big names, Phil, have got plans in the back of their mind to try and get the victory. This is Arrieta going off the back of that group, which will now just be 5 riders, and the pressure on the front was really made by his own teammate Garcia Acosta. But the thing about this climb here, Phil, is it is actually very difficult just to ride along, and if you have a slight bad patch, you find yourself not able to follow the rhythm. Looking at the back of the group there, though, Lely looks pretty comfortable.
Looks very cool. In fact, another acceleration coming here from the boys from Benesto. Odds are 2-1 now, with Benesto versus Kelme. We're 10 kilometers up the mountain, and they're the 5 who are left in this leading group. Behind now, Comesso, Vidal and Arrieta.
Well, Ochoa is the Kelme rider in this group. He will be very happy with this situation at the moment. In fact, in the main field, we hear there's an attack from Ulrich, and Escartin is there. There will have to be a response now coming from Lance Armstrong. I felt as if Ulrich was going to try and set something up here, Phil, but I didn't expect it to be so soon.
Well, he jumped straight on, so Arienza here from the Seiko team is going to find a couple of tornadoes blowing by if he doesn't jump the wheel very quickly, because this is a serious move by Escartin. Ulrich just following at this stage to see what reaction is going to come from that little pack behind. And slowly but surely, it looks as though they're being pulled back up to the group here.
Armstrong's still very cool. There he is in 6th position in the yellow jersey, just sitting there, just seeing how far those riders get off the front. He has a teammate on the front there. I think, in fact, that was Tyler Hamilton who was setting the pace for US Postal Service. Armstrong looks very cool indeed at the moment, and just waiting to see if that was a dangerous move, and if it was, I expect he's still got the power to be able to leap across the gap and neutralize it.
Escartin, he's like a giant spider the way he crawls all over that bicycle. Not the best of styles. He reminds me of Robert Albin, who used to be on your team, Paul, that used to ride in a similar style as that.
He certainly did. A bonbon, they called him, because of the fact that when he did attack, it really was as if he was letting off fireworks and firecrackers. It was difficult to see, in fact, if Tyler Hamilton was in that group. He is still there at the moment, but I think that acceleration has cost Lance Armstrong another teammate here. As you can see, that acceleration has really blown 1 or 2 riders off the back.
It actually hurt Pantani, because he's just latching back on at the end with one teammate. He was dropped by that sudden acceleration. He doesn't like those rapid accelerations. It takes him a while to get back into his rhythm, and then he comes back on. There he is at the bottom of our picture with the white headgear on, number 71. And the group with Serrano has come back together, and it looks as though that little attack has just opened up the lungs a bit, but basically all back together, and they're leaving Escartin on the front now. They don't trust him anymore.
Well, Armstrong has still got his 2 teammates in there. I just got a glimpse there of Kevin Livingston riding himself onto the back of that group with Marco Pantani as well. Fairly close to the yellow jersey, just on the left-hand side there. You can see Tyler Hamilton too, the big climber from the US Postal Squad, comfortably in the group. Obviously, Jan Ullrich is very attentive today, Phil. He's used his team over the first few kilometres of this climb, and he feels that he's got the strength on these climbs now, and he's probably feeling that he will get stronger as the tour continues. But he begins the Alpine stages with a deficit of 5 minutes on Lance Armstrong. That is an awful lot to make up.
Escartine keeps giving them a little bit of an acceleration, but shedding no one. Botero down there, first day in the King of the Mountains jersey for him, and here he goes. He decided it's time to have a go himself. And look, now that's how you accelerate.
Well, you see, when he accelerated, a lot of those guys, they actually looked the other way and said, I don't want to be the one to go. That is how the real climbers accelerate. They bounce out of the bunch like that, and I think no chance of Jan Ullrich coming in after that one.
Well, that was a real acceleration and a pure climber in full flight. He's having a wonderful Tour de France now, Santiago Botero, the champion of the Alps yesterday, and still could climb into a high finish in Paris. He's exactly 10 minutes behind Armstrong overall, and there's been no reaction from the field, because if you can put your kill in like that, nobody's going to follow.
Oh, that was pretty scary. I don't think anybody wanted to try and react to that. You have to be a very special bike rider to be able to react to an acceleration like that on the slopes of a climb as steep as this one here, the Col de la Madeleine. And even his own team captain there, Fernando Escartine, thought, that is going to be very difficult to try and follow.
So we've got 5 riders in the lead. Arieta, Comesso and Vidal all spread out on the mountain, and they're all looking now for this man in the red spotted jersey heading up towards them, and he's flying.
Absolutely unbelievable. He's worried a little bit, I think, about making sure that he keeps the King of the Mountains jersey on his shoulders. He has at the moment got a 50-point advantage over his own teammate Ochoa, but Ochoa is up the road, Phil, in that leading group of 6 riders, and for the moment everybody's sitting back and just being quite content to let the pacemaking go to Team Telecom. And now it's Giuseppe Guerini on the front, Ullrich in second place, and I think somewhat surprised by that violent acceleration by Botero.
Common sense prevailing, I think, amongst these riders, especially Armstrong, who's proved the art of being patient in this year's Tour de France and not chasing everybody that moves, because he's still got that last climb to come, and about a third of the way still to climb up here to the top as well. This is Nadello, and it looks as though the group here is again in a bit of bother as Lely sets the pace now.
Well, Lely sets the pace, and he's looking very comfortable on the slopes here of the Col de la Madeleine. They've got to go right the way up there to the sky. You can see the man who's been left behind again, a Banesto rider, Garcia Acosta, has been dropped from this group now, leaving the group at the front of the bike race to be just 4 riders strong. Jimenez in the white jersey there now, responding to the acceleration of Lely. Ochoa is the Kelme rider, and Nardello, I think, riding a very good stage today, and he's the kind of rider who could pop up with a surprise win on a mountainous stage like this, because a few years ago he actually won a mountaintop finish of a stage of the Tour of Spain.
Plenty of support waiting for him on Courchevel as Lely looks over his shoulder now, and he's going to keep the pace on for the moment. That is Jimenez tucked in behind him, has the likeness of the great climber and the great rider indeed, Miguel Indurain, whose birthday it is today. As we go back to Guerini, winner of Alpe d'Huez last year, setting the pace for the winner of the Tour de France a couple of years ago, Jan Ullrich. Armstrong just watching everybody and doing nothing. Ominous, I wonder.
But he did say a couple of days ago that on the attacks on the Col de l'Aubisque in the Pyrenees, he had to sit back and be very patient indeed. He wanted to go after the climbers when they attacked, but he thought that he should not do that. Again, the attacks coming from Once Serrano. Marcos Serrano once again going off the front, but you know, he isn't going to pull back that attack by Santiago Botero very quickly.
He hasn't gone clear as fast, that's for sure, and I don't think they'll chase him either just yet, because he's not a threat.
He's a long way down in the overall rankings, but there you can see a rider who is coming back. That's a Kelme rider who I think earlier on was in the leading group of riders, so that is Vidal probably, who has been dropped by the leading group of 8, and shortly he will be back in the group of the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong.
First one back then, Vidal. We've got Garcia da Costa, Arieta, Comesso still up the road, and Botero, of course, who's trying to join them, and judging by the last time we saw him, he can't be far away from them.
Well, he ripped across that gap. You know, he's halfway across the gap at the moment, and the big major contenders are very content, I think, Phil, just to keep an eye on each other. Nobody could respond to that sort of acceleration except maybe a super Marco Pantani. I don't think Marco Pantani is actually super today, because those last couple of accelerations had him actually slipping to the back of the group.
Little tete-a-tete in this group of 25 between Guerini and Ulrich, while Escartin's dropped back into the third rank now, and Armstrong obscured for the moment, covered by the Festina riders around him there. They've got no big effort being made here now, and we've run out of cameras because there are so many riders spread on the mountainside. We can't get one on top of Botero just now, but we'll pick him up shortly and see what sort of progress he's making. I would be quite interested to see Paul, because he must be closing in pretty quickly on the leading group of 4.
Very quickly, the Cofidis rider on the far side is Roland Meyer, and the Festina rider you can see just on the front of the main group there with the bandage on his arm, in fact, is Belocchi. He's been complaining over the last couple of days of a slight tendinitis in his wrist, and that's why he's got that plastered up for the moment. The other Festina rider there is Christophe Moreau, currently the best Frenchman in the rankings, in 4th place, and a position he's going to have to battle out with Richard Virenque.
So as we see Vidal going back into the group, another attack being launched, and it looks as though it'll again be the Seiko man, and he tries again, Atienza.
A lot of these little flurries are going uncontested, Phil. The reason is that the big challengers for the overall win at the Tour de France after 3 weeks are watching each other very closely. They're not too worried about these lesser riders who are leaping off the front at the moment, because they feel certain that these attacks will be pulled back into the fold later. This time the acceleration has come once again from Escartin, but all it's doing really is pulling back that attack of Atienza, and I feel very certain and confident that Jan Ullrich will try something towards the summit of this climb, because he's very much present at the front of the group.
I'm really mystified as to why, though, Escartin keeps doing these flurries of useless attacks, quite honestly. All he's doing is causing a reaction to chase down his own teammates.
Well, he was not wanting to stay with the Kelme squad during the winter months. He felt after his performances over the last couple of years that somebody would snap him up for a $1 million contract, and at the end of the day nobody really wanted to sign him up. They thought maybe he was past it, and he ended up remaining with the team that he'd been with for several years. This is the leading group up the road. This is led all of the time here by Lelli, Massimiliano Lelli, 124 from the Cofidis team. An excellent rider, a man who's been very consistent throughout his career with a few great wins here and there, and they seem now, Phil, at the front, have settled down to a fairly sensible pace-making. Botero, by the way, was born in Colombia, in Medellin, as he gets towards this a couple more of the Banesto riders who were in the group earlier on. This is Garcia Acosta he's catching here, and Arrieta, and they're going to try and accelerate to stay with him. But when he does put down the hammer a bit more rapidly, they're going to have a hard time.
Well, gosh, here we got the Kelme all of a sudden are getting numerical advantage here, because Banesto had 3 men in the break and they've dropped a couple. They've still got one up there in Jimenez, and Ochoa is up there, and if Botero shakes off these two, then the team race takes on yet another appearance.
Well, it's going to be a major battle over the next few days between Banesto and Kelme, and certainly nobody can decide just for the moment who is going to get the advantage in that big fight. But as I was saying, that climber there, Botero, he's actually from Medellin in Colombia, and he spends most of his season living in Santa Pola in España.
2 minutes 39 to the chasers now, and that I think will be Botero as he tries to get across the gap. He might just make it before the top because he's such a good climber.
Well, we saw him climbing very well yesterday, and also descending well as well. So if he does go over the summit with around about 1 minute's deficit, he might find himself reintegrating that leading group of 4 riders on the descent down into the valley.
Well, they've been climbing now for about 12 kilometers on the climb, Paul, so I guess that puts them still about 6 or 7 kilometers to climb, a long way.
An awful long way to the summit of this climb. Garcia Acosta is the Banesto rider, hanging on to the Botero train at the moment, and Arrieta now finding himself just left to his own devices and riding at his own tempo.
1 down, 1 to go as far as Santiago Botero is concerned with the Banesto boys, and then free to fly up towards the rest. There are 4 riders left up front, remember, before he picks off the major points for an all-category climb, which I think is 40 points in the King of the Mountains. And now there's a little, I thought he was going to grab onto the motorbike there, but he's just taking a drink.
That the gap, he's already halved it, Phil. 143
flying
to the leading group of 4. This man certainly has proved to be a great climber in the Tour de France this year. Salvatore Comessa, the man who started the actions on today's breakaways, is being caught by the yellow jersey group, the group of Lance Armstrong and Jan Ullrich. But for him, he'll be pretty happy that he's fairly close to the summit of the Col de la Madeleine and not having too much to worry about today about getting himself eliminated.
The comparative comfort of riding in the group. But for how long for Salvatore? His plan was to get a nice march on the big mountain and then be with them over the top. He's not too far away from the top, but he's going to have to hang on for a while yet, because Guerini, who's had his ups and downs to say the least in this year's Tour de France. 1 minute he's off the back, next minute he's setting the tempo for Jan Ullrich. He climbed brilliantly last year when he won the stage to Alpe d'Huez.
In this group as well, a quick glimpse there on the left-hand side. The white jersey Mapei rider is Manuel Beltran. Another man high in the rankings, 7th overall for him. Quite remarkable, really, because Mapei came to the Tour de France this year without any of their major leaders, as we now see Pascal Hervé moving forward. Hervé, Phil, over the last couple of days has looked to me as if he's actually stronger than Richard Virenque, and he's done an awful lot of work for the little Frenchman from the Midi of France.
Well, he's been a superb teammate, but I think like you, Paul, as to whether he's wasted his energy here to try and help Virenque, because I felt that Hervé has been the stronger rider. And remember, Richard was the man that won at Courchevel last time we came up here. Now it's a question of whether he can take him to the last climb of the day and launch him up there and try to win again.
Well, it would actually be more sensible, because of the form that Hervé has got at the moment, for him to ride his own race and try and get himself the victory here, as they pick up rider after rider moving their way up the climb. They're catching there Serrano, who we'd forgotten had attacked a little earlier on, so he is also now back in the fold in the group of all the major contenders. I can't see that anybody is actually missing from this group at the moment. They all riders from the top 11 places in the overall standings are present in this group.
About 1.5 minutes the gap back to Botero from the leaders, and Garcia da Costa still hanging on to him. As we go back to the leaders, being led by the two Polti riders, an Italian team with these two Frenchmen spearheading the charge today. And the French crowd, and not all French, there's plenty of nationalities on the slopes of the Madeleine today, politely applauding as the riders go by.
I think the biggest newcomers to the Tour de France as spectators really have been the Germans. Since the arrival of Jan Ullrich on the scene, there's been an awful lot more camping cars from the other side of the Alps in Germany coming down here to watch the bike race and take part. And in fact, the Germans getting unbelievable viewing figures for their Tour de France coverage, with around about 5.5 million people watching the Tour de France every day.
Well, that's absolutely tremendous. Probably comes to them in daylight hours though, Paul.
Hervé is really a tough bike rider here. You know, 1 or 2 riders here today, Phil, thinking about the victory of the stage seriously, because the fact that Hervé has come to the front with Virenque on his wheel here makes me realise that they too now are trying to set themselves up for a stage victory. But this acceleration really has blown this group to pieces now. Jan Ullrich is still fairly close to the front. Armstrong is pretty comfortable in there as well, accelerating up into 4th position. But you know, I do think we will see a lot more riders going off the back, and there you can see one of the Festina riders in difficulty, and I wonder if that's Bilocchi, and also the pink jersey of the Pirate just clambering back onto the boat.
He just lassoed the ship there, I think, because it was about to sail without him. But he's back on the tail, and I must say again, Pascal Hervé is showing us some fine strength on the mountains here. There is the Pirate. And but whatever you say about him, Paul, he is a rider who actually tries very hard. That looks like Heras. Roberto Heras is also tagged onto the back. The Kelme, again, bringing their man who's lying 6th overall in the Tour onto the tail of this group, which is now becoming very select indeed. But I was saying about Pantani, Paul, he has suffered like he's never suffered before in the mountains, because he keeps reminding himself, I think, that he is Marco Pantani.
Absolutely. He said looking at the accelerations of Armstrong on the slopes of Haute-Cam, it brought him back down to earth. It made him realise that you do have to suffer to be a top professional cyclist. I think in the past he was able to accelerate on many occasions in the mountains without putting himself into difficulty. But we've seen him in this year's Tour de France really suffer to stay in contact on a terrain which normally was his own.
Well, certainly Hervé has thinned them out a little bit now, and there's Pantani adrift again. He's just didn't really recover from that acceleration. He needs to settle in and try again.
Another man going off the back there as well is Bilocchi as well. He's been put into difficulty too. This group now is just down to 7, 8 riders there, and it's all because of the work being done on the front by Pascal Hervé. Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong, first and second in the overall standings, are very comfortably there, but the man who started the day in third, the big revelation of the Tour de France so far, Joseba Bilocchi, well, he's been left behind.
Well, he can afford to be left behind by just under a minute, and then he'll be back on again. Pantani's back. Christophe Moreau in the blue there. He's next in line for Bilocchi's place. He's a teammate too if he doesn't get back on.
Well, in fact, just catching a glimpse there, Bilocchi just managed to scramble onto the back of this leading group. But you can see today, Phil, a lot of these guys are under pressure. Pascal Hervé on the front is doing a magnificent job there. In fact, he's actually eating into the advantage of Santiago Botero as well, who's still pointed at 1.5 minutes from the leading group of 4, but they're only now 2.5 minutes back to this group of Ullrich and Armstrong.
Superb riding here by Hervé. There he is, concentrating and stamping on those pedals. Virenque giving no indication of how he's feeling. Looks pretty cool at the minute. Way down behind, you can see the slopes of the Madeleine as we continue now to head up towards the summit. No further news at the moment on the progress of Botero. We think he is still riding with the Spanish rider Garcia da Costa, and he is closing in, but he hasn't caught up with the leaders yet.
There you can see Bilocchi just on the right-hand side next to Marco Pantani there. He managed to recover from that acceleration there and pull himself back into this group. In the group you can see Armstrong and Ullrich, Escartin and Roberto Heras. The 2 Festina riders are Moreau and Bilocchi. On the front, the 2 Polti riders are Virenque and Hervé. And just tucked in at the back is Marco Pantani, the pirate himself, and he will try and stay with this group, Phil, and certainly I think we'll see him launch an attack again on the final climb of the day up here to Courchevel.
Well, the way it's going with these riders here, unless there's some fearless descending from the rear of the race, we could have a very select group going for the final showdown today on the climb of Courchevel. There's the slopes of the Col de Madeleine. It really is an inhospitable mountain in bad weather, but although the cloud is up there where the riders are climbing to now, at the moment it is reasonable conditions, and the wind, although reasonably strong, it's not quite the gale force it has been these past few days.
I do think we will also see a very rapid climb up the slopes of Courchevel here, because for the first time on one of these climbs, Phil, we are actually looking here at a tailwind ascent. This is Garcia Acosta, who was earlier in that leading group of 8. He's been pulled back into the fold right now. So as far as I can figure out, we must have Arrieta up here somewhere, unless he's been caught and dropped in our absence. And the only Banesto man remaining at the front of the bike race is Jose Maria Jimenez.
These are the 4 leading riders who were 6 and have thinned to 4. They were 8 originally. The majority are now back. We're looking now as they come up to the last kilometre of the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. We're looking for the possible arrival of Botero. So here we have the leaders now, the remnants of the breakaway inside the last kilometre of the Col de la Madeleine, and these 4 riders are going to fight out the points, I think. Trying to get on terms with them is the king of the mountains, Santiago Botero. He's still about a minute behind as these 4 riders come up to the summit.